trying to live stream. Got it.
Mr. Crack Spider. Press web, 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 Mr. Crack Spider. The web structure was not affected. Bug Spider, Mr. Crack Spider. Press web, Mr. Crack Spider. The web structure was not affected. The spider can't go within 100 centimeters of the web. The spider can't go within 100 centimeters of the web. The spider can't go within 100 centimeters of the web. The spider built a web, found a mate, and raised over 100 young. But the mate got a restraining order, and now the spider can't go within 100 centimeters of the web. The spider built a web, found a mate, and raised over... The crack cocaine spider figured building webs was for sucker. Waited until Captain the Spider was exhausted. Captain Spider.
Hello. Welcome
Hello.
to Weaving Spiders. Welcome. Episode number 43.
Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome, Chaney.
Welcome, Chaney.
I am so glad you're here because I've been listening to your show, and when there's those, you hear somebody and you're like, God, I know this person. Like the things they say and you connect. It's like when I discovered Lindsay, well, we talked for years before online, before she had her show, and she started doing this. And I'm like, God, she's like, I feel like she's reading my mail. It's like creepy. Nobody thinks like me. And then she connected to you, and I started watching your stuff, and you really open up back then. And it's like, I know these people. So I wanted to talk to you and pick your brain. So thank you for doing this.
I'm excited. Any friend of Lindsay's a friend of mine.
Right? The connections are really cool. And the same thing, these guys, I found these guys through her too, because Snake Jones was on here, and we have this very weird connection through military contracting. And I just heard him talking one night with these guys, and I'm like, oh, these are my people. So I had to be here. So you have to too now.
I'm excited.
So tell me about how you started this one, Project Chaney. How did this happen?
I kind of had I was done on air. Energetically, I was done with podcasts. I was kind of done with chat rooms, and I was done with arguing, that kind of energy of trying to debate a point or not be able to like have to get cemented in shoes to stand by points, to argue, just to be contrarian on things. I don't know. I was going through my own logic break of some things that were kind of making that I thought so hard were trying to make sense to me. I was like needing to feel and not think about. It was like two things were competing in my head. And I was kind of going through it on air on Idiocalypse. But a few times while I was on Idiocalypse, like the my old podcast, there was a couple of people that sat across from me, and like all this chaos of the show, that energetically I could feel them or like sense them or envision something different, like different connections or different past whatever surface was happening there. There was something else. And there was places that the conversations were kind of going to the edge of, but I was wanting to go further energetically and like alchemaically with people. I was wanting to like kind of expand my own. I like wanted to break my own logic, but I also wanted to break my own heart. I was having different empathy. And so I felt like everything was kind of getting to this surface level of what everybody was comfortable talking about. And somewhere I wanted to get to the awkward and the uncomfortable and the like stuff that I don't know, maybe we need to tell every single person in our life, but for some reason, nobody's ever even asked. And so I just wanted to ask. And yeah, so I started a podcast and I felt like there was a whole bunch of people out there that I had met that weren't scared to say it. And I felt like if I could sit down with them and if they were willing to sit down with me and kind of like we're allowed to talk about anything, like anything. And they'd be like, yeah, because in our conspiracy heads, we kind of talk about everything and we kind of are not normal all the time. But I think sometimes we forget kind of where we came from, or we forget like maybe part of our spiritual journey or our own growth of everything. And so sometimes I like to tie it all together because I think someone hears like me be anti-vax and be all crazy if I'm being off about NASA today or conspiratorial about Disney. And they think this chick, this lesbian from Florida, she has no, horse in the race. She doesn't care. She can be anti-vax and anti-mask all she wants. But then when I have parents on and people that are differently accomplished than me from maybe a more similar walk of life, and then they're conspiratorial too. I think sometimes the conversations get a lot deeper, away from the next we talk about Bill Gates for 2 hours,
Yeah. And let it just go organically where it needs to go. Right. And it's like, I think we're uncomfortable with, we've been shamed into not being able to ask the what ifs in our own thought process. We've been taught this in school that we can't think outside of these lines. So we have to have it your character has to do this and your character has to do that. But the like the Marvel books, if any of you guys have like the old Marvel what ifs, like Fantastic Four, what if the Thing was actually the Hulk, or what if Scarlet Witch was Queen of the Universe or something like that. Like it makes us think bigger. Like, and we stopped asking those questions about what if Bill Gates is the Antichrist? Maybe.
Yeah.
McAfee said so.
Yeah.
We're trained. We can't think that way.
I just think we spend so much of our lives. I think part of the broken education system taught us to like compete with each other to regurgitate the best. And whoever became the best regurgitator got the best grade, and the best grade got the best school, and the best school got the best job. And if you got the best job because you were the best regurgitator, you had the least amount of care about injuring anything, really, human, livelihood, neighborhood, animal, whatever. You're a regurgitator. So any information you get that thing's okay to do, you're okay doing that thing. It's like a Berkeley experiment. So somewhere along the line, we got rewarded for regurgitation, and we used to be rewarded for like philosophizing. We used to be rewarded for expanding the idea. And somewhere along the way, it got like just rewarded for like not questioning at all. Like you would be a disruptor of the classroom if you questioned too much. And it didn't matter if you proved it wrong. If you proved the book wrong in 18 ways, your teacher would still tell you, well, you have to know it for the test. Because they had to teach it for whatever weird regurgitation new thing they were on. So yeah, somewhere along the way, we were definitely untaught questioning.
Exactly. I think, Jim, you feel the same way. I think like we've had these discussions off the air that we're just tired of being in polite society where we can't ask the hard questions. We can't go deeper. And I find that those are the people that are looking deeper in themselves too. Like they're the ones that are spiritually seeking. There's the surface level conspiracy people. They're like babies, like baby Christians. Like we've talked about that, I think, in the culture, like newbie conspiracy people just coming in and being like, oh, wow. Hey, in fact, today my boss was like, hey, I just saw this thing where there's all these actors that are going to the BLM rallies, and they're the same Antifa people, and they have IMDb pages. I'm like, yeah, no shit. I sent that to you like 3 years ago. I'm like, but I'm glad you're here, man. Come on, keep coming.
When do we get our own IMDb pages? Do we have to make them ourselves?
Yeah, you do. You can do that. My daughter has one.
What are you going to put on your IMDb page, Project Chaney?
I'm going to put the most MAGA-eest witch. I just took a DNA test, and it turns out I'm that witch.
Oh, hey, can you explain your bitch goddess thing?
Bitch goddess thing. Oh, Diana.
Diana.
Diana, she was like the goddess of the pack, the goddess of the dogs. And somewhere I feel like in all the goddess worship, the inversion of the feminine, the dog became God. And it's all the inversion of Diana, the moon goddess. And I even think silver is a metal of the moon. And even if silver is on the gold standard, money doesn't make any sense. And the most powerful people in the world don't care about money. It's like even crazy to be like, well, the Rothschilds are worth blank amount of money. It's like telling us the population. Gold is one of the only precious metals on the planet that we have to mix things with to make it usable. It's not a real great metal. It's conductive, but it's not the most conductive. Silver's the most conductive, and silver's hard as fuck, and silver's reflective as fuck. Like silver's all. Can I cuss here? I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
I know that.
Please do. Please.
I realize that every single time I always say fuck first, and then can I cuss here? Yeah, I think there's even something with the gold standard, like everything's the lie to get the other thing. Like somehow they tell us one thing's valuable to get the thing underneath it, and tell us the next thing's valuable to get the thing underneath that. So it's like the walk-in of this like Bitcoin to make us stop using dollars and cents, and us using dollars and cents instead of using gold, and us using gold and silver instead of using trade. But really it all goes into conductivity. Because we're conductive, it's all about electricity, power, votes, volts, like all of this stuff. We're conductive, we're energy. So if we're energy, it's all about conductive metals, and the most conductive metal is silver. So I really even think gold's kind of probably a secondary thing. Like the thing they really want one day is all the silver.
And you think that's related to the moon?
It's just the divine feminine metal, silver, and the moon's the divine feminine.
Of course.
It's all the same representation, symbolism, like gold, sun.
That's
and
cool. I love, see, that's why I like minds like Alan, like we just wind them up and let them go.
Sometimes it
Love
seems
that.
like a really nice walked path, and other times I hear myself talking and I'm like, why am I talking about the iPhone and you just asked me about Artemis? Like, what am I talking about right now?
Multi-contextuality.
So is
Yeah.
anybody else like writing stuff or trying to explain things to people and then going back in text and looking at them and you're like, do I sound like a crazy person? I probably do. I probably sound like a crazy person. But this is what you got, man. We're here.
I don't know
This
if
is all
I'm the
reality.
one. I feel like there's levels you have to get to at this point. Like if you're the person that's just waking up and you're like, oh my gosh, I think there's something weird about 9/11. I do not think I'm the friend you call at this point. I think there is 3 other friends that you have to talk to. Like you got to build yourself up. You have 365 days of even lingo to learn before we can even have a conversation at this point.
Oh my God, yes.
Like I can't even, I have nothing to, there's certain like memes or things people share with me or send me now or try to kind of, and I know they're being sweet. They're trying to relate to me on something, but I almost don't even have, I'm like, all I do is heart it or thumbs it up. Like, I'm like,
all right. Yeah. Oh, good.
I'm glad you're here.
Save it for later.
Yeah.
It'll come up again.
Yeah, I'm not a naysayer now, and I'm not a poo-pooer. I understand, like I spiritually have to wake up, and I love people like, Lindsay from Rogueways that, I just, looking back now, I always think of people like that look at me then almost like with like an older sister, motherly energy of like, oh, look at her learning how to ride her bike. She's gonna fall 10 times and she doesn't even know it yet. She thinks she's like, I got this, and now looking at it with like the ego deaths of it all and getting more comfortable even with that, and even that, oh, this is kind of the never ending thing, and like all these, I don't know, the infinite amount of I don't know.
The never-ending story is what it is.
Yeah, it's all that.
It's the never-ending story reference again. What we were watching you with Lindsay, and I clicked into the middle of the video, and she was immediately talking about the never-ending story. So it was perfect.
It is. She loves it.
So Alan has a bunch of stuff dug up on that too. Do you have something new, Alan? You do, probably, right?
Always. There's always something new that I dig up.
So what's your never-ending story thing?
I'm getting into the estate of Michael Endy and the legal requirements to merchandise the book and the property. And that's been tied up for quite some time. So if you go on Etsy and you find reproductions of Oren or the book itself, that's kind of in a gray area. So we'll see how that kind of ends up.
Huh. Where's that going? Like, why is that? Is it going to end up in Disney's hands? Get ruined?
No.
And they're going to make 14 more?
No, it can never end up in Disney's hands.
Ruin them like every Marvel movie?
It'll never go to Disney's hands. It's I have the article that I found. I know Appian Way was trying to get their hands on it. That's what's his name's company, the guy who was in Growing Pains.
What?
Kirk Cameron?
Okay. Kirk Cameron.
The other guy.
Leonardo DiCaprio?
That's the guy.
He was in Growing Pains?
I think so.
Yeah.
Huh.
He was an adopted kid in Growing Pains.
Yep.
Oh, weird.
like the last maybe 2 seasons of Growing Pains.
He's kind
I
of a
just
puppet for the New World Order, it seems like, pushing all of the green city agenda stuff, at least a few years ago. I haven't really watched TV for the last few years, so I haven't seen what he's been up to that much, but it seems like it.
DiCaprio is.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. So,
Yeah,
did he show up on any of those pedophile lists?
I
Like,
haven't read the lists.
I don't know.
Because have you been watching the McAfee leaks? You have, right? Well, you're the one that turned me on to that, I think. Then the Telegram.
Yeah, I don't know if I honestly never even read the Isaac Cappy. I never even read his list ever. I kind of just thought he was like the biggest face to it, and I never really took him at all seriously. I always thought he was using QAnon and Pizzagate as a way to get famous because he was kind of a C-level actor. I really never took the guy seriously until he died. And then Tom Hanks did the Route 66. And I was so obsessed with Tom Hanks for so long, just thinking he was the New World Order puppet, and everything he does attaches to something that I can link. I can link every conspiracy to a Tom Hanks movie. And
Let's start with Splash.
I think Mermaids alone is so crazy. Sirens of it all. I think her octaves when she breaks all the TVs. I believe like octaves and harmonies are probably how the most magnificent buildings were built in the world. I think that's probably the key to healing. It's probably the key to weather. It's the key to like harmonies and synchronization of tones. And yeah, so that would just be quick off the top of my head. And I haven't seen that movie in like 30 years.
Yeah, the harmonics thing. Like we talk to Chance sometimes, and he does a lot of that. Do you know Chance from Interverse?
No, but that's my brother's name.
One of these guys that are just amazing minds in this community. But anyway, he does the tuning forks, right? And he's been using those for healing. And it really got me thinking about how cymatics, when you change a tone and it makes those shapes. You've seen the cymatics, like when they move the tone up and down, and it makes those shapes, But so if you extrapolated that shape as you're doing it, that's what sound looks like in the air. That's what the vibration is doing. And that's got to be a fractal. Like there's got to be a way to measure that out.
And that's what the stained glasses, that in all of those buildings, the stained glass is the shape of the sound that is made in the church.
And all those old churches, they have like organs and big like bells and noise frequency devices. And they're all set up on energetic ley lines. And Nikola Tesla said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration.
Yeah. Hey, Alan, why do we sing at worship? Why do we sing in the worship? And why do we start the services with the big numbers and the getting them going? It's because it works. Those harmonics work.
Clapping.
All the clapping, the drums, the rhythm, singing with the tambourine, praising the Lord's name with the tambourine in your voice.
War drums, chanting.
War drums. That's why the walls of Jericho fell. Right, Alan?
The rhythmic drumming especially gets you into a hypnotic state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it works.
Yeah, they say you can get your own DMT to drip, like have your own experience just with tones. And I don't know, there's a fun show called Motherland Fort Salem. And it's all like a parallel universe of witches that kind of battle against bad witches and wizards to save all the countries. And so the like American Revolution was fought by witches and the paintings. It's really interesting, but the like young witches when they turn 18 all have to go to Fort Salem and learn all their skill set. And so one of the things they're in groups of 3. And one of the things they do is learn how to control their voice to make these little twisters in the water. And they're all like, oh, but somebody else, oh, octave or like
Yeah.
doing altos and sopranos and stuff. And they're all just harmonal. But then you think in like the MK Ultra kitten programming of everything that we know as celebrities and Lady Gaga and Beyonce and Britney and all these sirens, all of these maybe golden trumpets, all of these witches. It's interesting to me how amazing their voices are.
Do you
That's
think
why
that's
we
a
talk
bread
about
thing?
Lord.
Huh?
That's why we talk about Lord and her music.
And even that song Royal, I was thinking about it the other day because, the inversion, like Aleister Crowley, and the think mirror of everything. Royal backwards is lawyer, like it's lawyer or liar.
Yep.
If you say it by
Oh.
tone. And
Yep.
so it's very crazy that people we consider royals, are they liars?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's all,
They
what are we
all are.
doing here? Yeah, what are we doing here?
When was the last time you voted?
2020?
Oh, yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. How many actors did you see at the Washington rally that you thought were actually actors? Like, what do you think the percentage was?
I think there was more people there than a million. But if there was a million people there, just to like make it easy on my brain, 100,000, 50,000, maybe even less than that, 25,000. In the grand scheme of things, I remember when Trump was speaking, and he was still speaking and people started to peel off the field, like from the far end of the field all the way over. And as like they hit a mark, other people started to peel. And as they hit a mark, other people. And then it became like sheep where other people were just following these people to the Capitol. But Trump was still speaking. And I was like, why are they leaving? Like we came all the way to Washington and stood out here in 20-degree weather to like listen to this guy half seat talk, because we all knew, or at least the conspiracy theorists knew Pence was gonna, like, it was no surprise to anyone that was in the conspiracy world what Pence was gonna do. So the idea of breaking the Capitol wasn't in any of our heads. More of us conspiracy people were there to watch Republicans get their dose of red pill, to be like, see, your party's dirty too, bitches. All your party's dirty. All your party's dirty. And so we were really just, what was happening, it was like, as the normal people, as the 900,000, 950,000 people dawdled up to the Capitol, it was like a play was going on. We were all like, what's happening? And it was,
Wow.
like maybe I don't even know. There wasn't that many people around there. Even all the pictures they put on TV aren't as many people that were there, and aren't as many people as even when I was standing on the Capitol were around me. And there's only one footage that they show on TV that I'm like, oh, I know it for a fact when that was and who that is. Other than that, there was like girls dressed in makeup, like smoking cigarettes and like sexy high heels. There was like grandmas like just sitting on the edge. Like, and I always thought it was funny that they show all the people climbing like monkeys on the outside, like a jungle gym, like we gotta get in there, like this, we're the insurrection. Because I didn't ever have to do that one time. It was like there was doors and stairways, and they were all set up on the outside of the Capitol to like help us get to the doors. It was such a setup. Everything about it was such a setup. And I think whatever the powder keg moment, like those, let's say 1,000, 10,000, 25,000, I don't even know, that were agent provocateurs, like those kind of idea of the ones that'll break the glass. So then the others are like, yeah, let's do it. And then the cops have to fight. And then we beat up the cops. And then they have to shoot us. And then it's chaos there. But the idea that they're still talking about it now and it is nothing happened. They're like, fourth cop died of suicide from the insurrection. The idea that they're talking about it now in the year that we've had is like, dude, they are desperately clinging to nothing with this. They're talking about Trump's tax returns again, which is nothing with this. They're talking about Cuomo touching someone's belly or something, which I'm like, really? That's like the least threatening thing Cuomo's done in the last 300 days. So it's the funny, like the news regurgitation wheel that they're on. It's like they're spinning. They don't know what to say anymore. It feels like they're running out of clip, like the movie reels, like tick, 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 tick. And it's like, are we really talking about Trump's tax returns? It feels bizarre. It feels like almost like they're running on empty right now.
Isn't it? It's just amazing. Like, and people are just finding this out. Like,
yeah, and just
that's amazing to me that you're just figuring this out. You're just seeing this now. That this has all been a complete setup.
It was craziness. It was and actually the whole day beforehand, and even how they set up the day, like they watered the lawns before this freezing day, so it was extra cold. They had one like hot dog cart out in the whole entire thing. They had like 3 porta potties. It was everything they could do to like make it the most miserable they could for us that day.
Oh yeah.
It was so weird.
Hey, so obviously this is like powerful ritual, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is ritual magic. Whatever that show is ritual magic. Like that's obvious, right? Is it obvious to everybody? Like, is that just for us? Like
energetically, I didn't know why the fuck I was going there that day. Like, I really didn't know why the pool was for me to go there at all. Like, I was not a political rally person. But
well, you were just observing, right?
Yeah, and I really kind of felt that way. I had a moment of like real fear, like my life's on the line. Like, oh my gosh, when I'm like standing up there and I can feel the like ground rattling underneath my feet. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I guess in that like idea in my head, if we're the news now, I guess I have a camera in my hand. I should videotape and take pictures and do what we're supposed to do. And then I tried to call out or film live. I tried to go on Instagram. I tried to call friends, but all of our phones were jammed. No one could call anyone. So friends of mine, I didn't know until I got way away from that time and event, 2 miles down the road and 2 hours later when my phone started turning back on. But people were like, get out of there. They are telling the world you're KKK. Like they're telling the world you're racist. Run. Like everybody was like, are you okay? Oh my God, what's happening? And they were telling the world this. We couldn't, all the buses were shut down, all the taxis were shut down, everything was shut down. And they just told the world we were skinhead, racist Klansmen. And then we had to walk to Maryland. So that was way scarier than the Capitol.
Wow,
was being
yeah,
a girl walking through Washington, D.C. After they've told everyone you're a racist. So I'm like, well, I can't hide the color of my skin right now. And I have like a 6-hour walk to my hotel. So this is going to be good.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, DC is a pretty rough place.
Yeah. And it was a couple of times that there was a time that I was like, oh shit, I'm gonna have to get in a fight right now. Like I'm gonna have to get in a fight with a crackhead. I'm gonna have to touch like snot and slime and everything. Like, but I felt the like raccoon, like I felt his tiger come across and my little Wolverine, whatever it was in there was like, I had to turn around. Like I couldn't have my back. And I was walking with my friend and I'm like, hey, what did I tell her? I'm like, watch your six. We just got shark bumped because he walked by us once, and on the second time by, I'm like, there isn't going to be a third time. If you're ever swimming in the waters around Florida, if a shark ever hits you once, it's bumping you to see if you're food. So on the second bump, you
Oh,
have to hurt it back. So you punch it, you poke it. It could just be a poke right up underneath it. But now it's like, ew, I don't want that. That's not food. So like a shark will never, on the third time, it's always going to bite. So it's called like, so in that moment of walking in DC of like, oh, I'm about to get jumped. I felt like it was human shark bump.
oh man. Do you think that's why you went for that? Like to experience that?
I think I
Yeah.
went because I don't believe anything. I had to see it for myself. Like I had to see it. I had to see it. I had to be in it. I had to see the Antifa different from the Proud Boys, different from the militia, different from the QAnons, different from the MAGA. I had to see all these segments of people and know the difference of them. I watched quote unquote like real patriots. I watched them when I felt like Antifa was grabbing cops and throwing cops into the crowd. And then like Anons and MAGA patriots were like grabbing these cops and pushing them back to the cops. It was such a weird thing that was happening. But because so many conspiracy people were there, we were all well aware of who Antifa was. We all were well aware of who agent provocateurs were. We were well aware of all the. So it was almost like you could see the different color red. It was not even the same color red because they had to know each other apart from us too. But I mock it about that day as I'm like, I was total accidental Antifa just by the way I look. They were like, oh, this lesbian? Like, oh, cool.
Oh, right.
Give her a stick. She'll bust through a window.
Were they kind of treating you like that?
Yeah, I felt like they just opened a door. I remember the one guy opened the door for me and people were climbing the walls and I was looking around. People had ladders. I'm like, where did the ladder come from? It was a chaos. And some dude just said, hey, free tours. And he like nodded me over and opened this side door. And there was like this stairwell. And I just walked up to the next level. And I felt like I had a real moment like the Sword and the Stone was inside and it was Westworld. Like these were all robots. And if I just kept walking forward, none of them were allowed to hurt me. It just felt so fake. Like they seemed like they weren't even allowed to hurt each other. At the front of it, it all looked so fake. It looked like a playhouse. It looked like a scene from like if you were watching a movie being filmed from the outside.
So we're going to start calling QAnon people Canaanites.
Canaanites? Canaanites?
There's that Cain again. Who was talking about that? Wasn't that Chance was just talking about that?
Chance brought it up. Yep.
Yeah. Cain and Kano, Kanalono is the god of the ocean in Polynesian. So Cain and that whole siren ocean god thing keeps coming up over and over again.
Yep.
Yeah, it's gonna be rough, man. I don't know. I'm looking out and seeing what's happening. It's like, I wonder why I chose this time to be here. And this is it. Like, we talk about, like all my life, we've talked about things of biblical proportions. And like, that's what's happening, man. Like we are in biblical events style times, you know? But I don't know.
We're in the safest time of all time.
I think
if you believe
awesome.
in history, it's really safe. It's why everybody has so much anxiety and depression is because they really have no need to, they're not panicked every day on where their water is coming from. They're not scared that a tiger's going to jump and eat their baby. They're not, worried that the lack of trash cans and washing hands is, oh, never mind. They are scared of the Black Plague. But it's still not the real Black Plague. But I'm not, I think they probably started those ones too.
It's cyclical. All this stuff is cyclical. It's always cyclical. If we've not seen anything from history, like all these things are cyclical.
The Black Plague is race bait.
Nice. So you're in Florida, right?
Yeah.
What did you grow up in Florida?
I was born in Palm Beach, and that's why Trump is my president. He's always been my president. Mar-a-Lago has always been my White House.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we've planned on. We always knew Florida was going to be the last free place on the country. It's all a big plan. You think it's about Q, but it's really about Florida. It's the real Atlantis. And all the chosen people are going to come back to it. Everybody thinks it's Israel, that all the real Jews are going to go back to Israel, but it's really all the real Atlanteans are coming back to Florida. And that's why there's a mass pilgrimage here. Just made that up right now.
I like it. Why not?
But I am.
Why
from
not?
Palm
Isn't
Beach.
the Bimini Road right down the peninsula, like the end of the peninsula, where all those sunken megaliths are?
I definitely. So, if you take the Florida Keys,
too far off.
No, I think the Florida Keys to Cuba to the Yucatan, I think all that was connected. And the Gulf of Mexico was the biggest freshwater lake on the planet and the beginning of civilization. That's what I really think. Somewhere around there makes more sense to me that it was the beginning of civilization than Africa. And I'm more inclined to think if all humans came from one human, we came from a brown human and then went darker and lighter from the center of that, as opposed to going from the darkest human all the way to the lightest. In my opinion, it makes more sense. So, yeah, I think like somewhere in the Yucatan, the Seminole Indians, or even that Cuba, there's that underwater sunken pyramid that Matt LaCroix does this really great piece on, if you guys haven't seen it. But a lot of people are talking about it now. Yeah, I think somewhere around that is probably the beginning of humanity.
You think that's what we're trying to get back to? Like this, because I'm like talking to people like you, and I'm just hearing a lot of people talking about this. There's the kind of global spiritual awakening that like all these people like you and who's the girl you interviewed just recently? Well, everybody you talk to, it always ends up coming up to spiritual awakening or ego death or something like that. Like everybody's starting to finally talk about this.
Yeah.
Is that the awakening? Is that the quickening that we're supposed to be looking for?
I think I always thought it was going to be in a book, and now I see it when other people are still looking for it in a book. It's so easy. It's the easiest ego for me to see of all the egos we have to kill. It's the one thing I'm like, oh, he's still looking for it in a book. You can read it and you can read the exact words that you need to unlock you. But until you fucking feel it, until you really fucking feel it, like nothing's going to change. You can keep reading and reading and reading until the cows come home. And everybody I think can feel it, but it's like empathetically, once you do decide that you are going to feel it, it is so intense to really take on like the energy of somebody else's pain. But it like it's heartbreaking in this way, but it creates this huge flood that I think that's where I think your divine feminine is your like empathy and heart. And I think your divine masculine is like your logic in your head. And somewhere when they come together, that's where your superpowers come from. but your logic has to be there in all this way to really protect you with that superpower. Otherwise, it just creates anxiety and depression, and you really don't know what to do with your empathy. You become a perfect battery for an energy vampire and somebody that's really good at looshing you. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I've heard you use this term loosh. I don't know what it means.
Really, I think it's kind of funny. I think it's a French word that everyone uses all the time now in the conspiracy world. That makes me kind of laugh because it just came out of like, and then there's an energy of loosh. I just think it's the vibe of fear. The higher vibe you exist in and the lower vibe they can get you to feed on creates this like delicious energy that like a vampiric person that feeds off that energy, that would be this loosh. Like if they can draw you down into this fear, there's something to gain by that. There's something delicious about it. It's like whatever the evil they are and whatever entities they invite into themselves by whatever kind of spiritual, weird, culty, whatever things they do, that they are turned on by stuff we couldn't stomach. They're turned on by it. Like Podesta art, I think, is the easiest way for people to put it in a visual. They are like a child screaming in pain or fear. They laugh at that, whereas we would never allow that to happen. And then they try to convince us that it's our human nature. Like all the ugliness, they try to convince us it's us, but really it's them. They try to convince us like you all have a serial killer in there, but probably most of the serial killers are all them on TV and covering their rituals and just trying to pass along more fear. And all the movies, like Stephen King would be another good version of Tom Hanks, or like pushing the CIA narrative. All these horror people, the best horror film is if they can take something that you do every day. Like, think of how many thousands of years humans swam in the ocean without fear. Like, it was just something they did. It was something they were a part of. It was something that fed them. It was something they honored. But then Jaws, the woods. How long did people just stare into the woods and walk into the woods at all hours of the night without even thinking twice about it, because they were just part of the woods? Some people saw really great in the dark. They didn't even need a torch. The animals heard them. They heard the animals. And then there was Friday the 13th. It's like these little bits of fear. I think there's low energies, densities, demons, something that feeds on you being scared to death, feeds on your fear factor, feeds on your thinking that you're going to breathe air or hug your grandma and die. Something gets off on that. And I think it's bigger than like an agenda of like, they want to control you and lock you in a prison camp. Like, it's darker than that to me.
It's there. Like, why all the ritual if it's not something, a light and dark thing? Like when you do ritual, right, Alan? When you do ritual, you take Eucharist. It's a light. You can know that it's a light and dark thing. It's a ritual. It's a like tangible, spiritually tangible thing that
that's what we were getting
making
into
the action,
in
right?
chat. The word loosh sounds like Lucius, Latin, a common Roman name for light, like Lux Ferrer, the light bringer.
Another illuminated one. I think light's fake too. That's why kind of the Tesla argument all the time with Edison. I'm like, gosh, but did we need either? What do we get out of electricity that we needed as humans that we couldn't do ourselves before they convinced us we couldn't? Do we need light? Or could we see perfectly fine in the dark? It just is the same kind of Coke Pepsi. Like, yeah, it would be super cool if everybody had clean running water, but maybe everybody did have clean running water before you dammed all the major rivers.
Oh yeah, we look at all the old timers that used to hunt and fish with a knife. Like we've lost those skills. Like
Or even
every
I don't know this to be true at all, but they are like, oh, Montezuma's revenge, Montezuma's revenge. Well, maybe you have a bunch of heavy metals in your system, and when you go down to Mexico and drink some creek water, you shit and you throw up because your body's full of pollution and Monsanto garbage. You're like, why is it for one thing if you do it on ayahuasca, but if you do it from drinking water, uh-oh. Like, what if sometimes your body needs to purge because you have poison in it?
hey, so when you were going through your spiritual awakening or whatever you want to call it, their change, did you go through like a self alchemy thing where you just purged your system? Did you
Yeah.
change your diet and
Mhm.
go? Did you do that before or after, you think? Like, was it that kind of kickstarted it? Do you think it helped?
I feel like they were kind of happening hand in hand in a weird way, like without me even
Same.
knowing it.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was, uh, people would be like, did you keto? And I'm like, no, I think I cavemaned. Like I went through a period of time where I didn't cook anything, like where I was just eating like raw fruits and I'm not a person that looked up stuff. I'm not like I didn't test my vitamin levels every day. I never took any vitamins. I think that's all on it. Joe Rogan, like like meh.
Yes.
And like
It's a
I'm not into
scam. Those
I'm
are
not into
scams.
vitamins. I don't even know what that plastic melt away stuff is on the outside. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what you're putting in there. It's like bottled water. Um but yeah, I totally went through like where I ate a lot of nuts and I found myself like exercising naturally more, like yoga, but I didn't want guided yoga anymore. It was like I was going through my own flows of yoga, wanting to run alone. Um, Turned off podcasts and started listening to music again. It was
Totally.
weird.
How wild. See, I kind of found the same thing with qigong. Like I was just kind of like it was naturally kind of calming. I started walking in the desert as I started keto and I started it like hardcore just because I was trying to build my brain back because I felt brain dead for years because of uh all the prescription medication and drinking and stuff. And so I felt like I had to build it back up. So I found this guy, this Canadian doctor, talking about how the brain is made of fats and cholesterol. So I went on a high fat keto diet just to try and build it back up. And that helped me kick all the medication, all alcohol, pretty much all the addictions, physical addictions. But the meditation and the qigong, like all kind of happened at the same time, like almost accidentally. Like you just kind of found this thing. And I don't know if it was that I was at the point where I was looking for everything or accepting everything, but I think it goes to that thing that Lindsay's talking about with the surrender, where you surrender your life and you kind of give up to you in a genuine way to the universe and it just kind of piles on you these things. You're like, oh, okay, you're ready to take this now. And spirit's like, here you go. Here's baby owls in your face to teach you that you don't have to take care of everything. Like, to teach you that nature is a badass and that it can talk to you and you should shut up and listen. And it's part of that surrender. Like you just let go and it just happens. Like spirit, and it's that thing that you can't describe, that connection to spirit. Like, have you ever had somebody like my wife is very intuitive, like psychic, and she gets impressions. Like she knew my friend was married before any of us even knew that he was dating somebody, and told us also, and it turned out to be true. Like she just knows stuff sometimes, but recently, like just being open, like it was a situation where you got to tell this person let go of some guilt, like some random person. And I felt like I had to. And I'm like, oh, that's what that feels like. Like, I don't know if that's channeling. I don't know if that's just hearing it, just being open, being in the right spot. But it's all those things, like you were saying, everything matters. Like all those little things brought you to this point so that you can surrender, so that you can be told to tell that person they need to let go of some guilt. Like that's an honor. To me, that's an honor. And I'm really thankful to be where I am. Like, and I love to hear your stories, like people like you and Lindsay and Johnny, who makes me fucking laugh so hard. I love that guy. But I so appreciate this community because of that. Because you can't just go out in polite society and say, hey, let me tell you about how I'm trying to open up my throat chakra.
No, I don't even know how people have a spiritual awakening and keep a real job. I don't know how people have a spiritual awakening and keep a relationship.
Yeah.
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 It's almost like I don't know. I don't know. I've been with my wife a long time, and I just sometimes it makes me laugh. Just like if she ever picked up my phone and went through my 11,000 pictures, she knows everything I talk about and look into and whatever. I should say if like her mom picked up my phone and looked at my 10,000 pictures, she would be like, you need to Baker act your wife. Like I look like, it's like I have 100 pictures of Britney Spears, different pictures of Tom Hanks, so many pictures of Lady Abramovich, all of like the entire catalog of QAnon, all the WikiLeaks. It's like the things on my thing. I have like Hillary with vampire teeth, layouts of Epstein Island, tunnels underneath the Playboy Mansion. It's like if you like, oh my gosh, Chaney CIA, like a normal person that doesn't know all this stuff is going on, they would think I was into next level weird stuff.
Totally. I think about that all the time. I'm like, oh, geez.
And so to mix it with the like psychic, like spiritual awakening, which I think a real spiritual awakening, there is a psychic, telekinetic, synchronistic, like it just all seems so crazy to say aloud that all that happens too. You feel crazy when it's happening, and to put it into words sometimes to the people that have known you forever is sometimes the hardest people to put into words to, because you were like, I was normal yesterday, and then today I think I maybe had like a psychic thing from somewhere in the early 80s that wasn't anyone I know, but I do think I know who it was. But they're not somebody I know well enough to really tell this to, but I think I am going to tell it to them because I'm in this kind of awkward. So here we go. That's what I feel like my life was for like 3 months.
Yeah. Like, I'm still all the time dealing. I'm so glad to hear you say that. We've been together 30 years. And she's been through some stuff with me, man. We've been through the ringer. I am so thankful to have her specifically in my corner. She's saved my life a lot. Like I look back over the years, I'm like, oh, I probably should have died then. Oh, no. I probably should have died then. Oh, no. Pulled out of the fire again somewhere. She saved my ass.
Sometimes I wonder,
it's amazing.
Like, there's somebody that's like, we're on the highest possible time. It's Kara Mosher said it first, but then, Graffinati kind of repeats it with this golden timeline thing. But she said, if you see me, I resonate on the highest possible timeline. So if you're here in me right now, you do too. And so I think about all the times in my life I probably died on different timelines, but this
Mm,
timeline I like didn't die in my backyard when I did DMT by myself. Like in
mm.
every other timeline, I that was like somebody walked out there and I was just an OD'd person. But on this timeline, I had a spiritual experience and came back. But like on this timeline, I didn't drown. But on every other timeline, I totally drowned in the pool that time, or I totally broke my neck when I fell out of the tree that time. But this timeline, we're all still here, and all those weird mistakes, those concussions, those broken limbs, the near car accidents, you're here right now because this timeline, we have to fucking win. Because otherwise,
Yeah, it's
we're like
like
alive in
Doctor
the New World
Strange.
Order, and it's so fucking boring. I could.
It's
It's so
like,
boring.
yeah, so boring. It's like that analogy is like the last Avengers movie, you know, where Doctor Strange is going through all the probabilities throughout all of time and every single probability to beat Thanos. And he finally finds one and it sucks so bad that everybody dies and you got to get him back. But that's the one. That's the one timeline that matters. And apparently this is it, I guess. We're here.
Iron Man.
Yeah.
You know what? Would
That's the
Iron Man
Christ.
just
That's the
be
Christ.
female?
Well, there is the Iron Maiden and the Iron. Yeah, I think it was called Iron Maiden.
Isn't Effie Iron?
Yeah, I don't know how the mythology like worked out after like 1993 or something after I stopped reading comics, but
Yeah, it would just be I thought they did clever. I loved all that. I loved
oh, we can't hear you, Chaney. Is that me? Oh wait, am I? Is
No, we're waiting for Chaney's voice again.
that it?
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
I was going to ask, how often do you read the periodic table of the elements?
It only takes one time if you got a good memory. I remember Iron Maiden. Well, I remember FE is
hello.
There you are.
There she
Okay.
is.
So weird. I don't know why it's doing that. It did that yesterday to me once, but it's locked, so it shouldn't ever move. Anyways, apologize.
No, you're fine.
Yeah.
You've seen us, right? Like how casual. We are not structured. We are not
Okay.
like we're like you guys were. We'll just hang out and shoot the shit.
Perf.
But
Yeah, I do look at some of the periodic tables often. It's like in my digs when I'm doing stuff, I'll always look into Latin. I always go to the periodic tables because I think precious metals and heavy metals, they obviously want to inject them into us for a reason. So I'm always curious. I think they have to, even people that are like, oh, make sure you go to DuckDuckGo because you're going to find a truer result. No, you're not. It's no, everything's a bottleneck. You just have to have the eyes to see it. They have to tell us. You just have to take out the don'ts or do's or thes or the ands. But if you put whatever you're looking for into Google, the answers are there. You just have to stop reading it in such a way of like, this doesn't do this or this does do this. Like you can just put in what you're looking for and kind of, you just have to have different eyes to look at it. But I do think like revelation of the method means they can't bury it. The easier they make it for us to find and the more in truth in plain sight they put it, karmically, that's got to be even feel better for them.
so did your interest in alchemy drive you to looking at witchcraft or the other way around?
I I thought the whole world once I'm like this whole fucking world is so ludicrous, and I believed in manifestations, I believed in energies, I believed in all of it, And even I thought LARPing, like the live action role play, all for a LARP, all for a LARP. Is this all for a LARP? I was just started to own, yeah, it is all for a LARP. And if we're manifesting, isn't LARPing the highest form of spell we could do would be to put on the clothes of something else and act like that thing until we became that thing? So I never really liked the word witch. Like the kind of like more butch lesbian in me. I always felt it was kind of a little too femme, but it seemed to trigger people when I say it. And in the Latin lookup of everything, the MAGA mage witch always, I thought the red on the head with MAGA being the thing. And right around 2018, 2019, when Trump started to do his tours again, and they were trying to change it on him to keep America great, to CAG, and he refused it and stayed with Make America Great Again with the MAGA. And it was even more so like looking into the QAnon stuff and seeing all the magic and spiritual warfare and seeing the wizards and seeing all of that. And I knew what I was looking into with Hollywood and what I was thinking with Marina Abramovich and Beyonce and Lady Gaga and all these people. And so I was just like, holy shit, if these bitches are witches, maybe we're all wizards and witches too. We just don't know how to use our magic. And if the further I looked into it with like sorcerers and priestesses and all these things, even back to like Romans and Egyptians, it was kind of used to be a world that was always run by magic. And somewhere along the line, it stopped being. So, yeah, I just started calling myself a witch more so because I found it pissed people off. And I also didn't want regular Republican MAGA folk to think I was part of their tribe. They're like, whatever they're Christian, because I always knew that first they come for then the gays are next because they think I'm going to burn in hell. So I always wanted to keep this kind of like, as long as I owned my witchy, you can burn me at the stake for that before you burn me for being a lesbian. Yeah, it just became more so a mockery at first. And the more I owned it, um, the more I found that people wanted to burn me at the stake for it. And it just became that much more amusing to own. And it was just like this level up. The more I said it, the more observation I got for it, the more powerful I felt like I was becoming. It was like this thing that at first I was playing with. And the more I found ritual in my life and sigils are my favorite so far of the kind of magic I've learned. I feel like whatever, like even over crystals or wands or other things that I see other people do with spells or even cooking, it's just not my witchy yet. But I fucking love
Oh,
it, and I have an awesome coven.
do you really?
Yes.
You actually have one? That's so cool.
Yes. I think it is like the world's coolest coven. And it's yeah, I want to brag about it and I want to brag about all of them. And I just think they're so awesome and like it's just so fucking cool. And but it's not my job to out them, even though some of them would not care at all. They would like um totally own it.
But
But
that's how cool
yeah,
is that
all
that you have
witches,
a community of that? You
all
know,
the
like those
ladies
kind
love
of
it. It's like every single girl I've gone up to, if I were single, being like, "Hey, you a witch?" would be the number one pickup line. Girls are like, I see them at first, and then like 30 seconds later, they're like, yeah, my friends think I'm psychic, or let me tell you this thing, or I have tarot, or
how
this or that,
cool.
or yeah, they're like, can I give you a rock? Can I, whatever? It's like they're just waiting for someone. Like, I always knew I was, my grandma was, my mom was, like the stories that just come out. It's like this pebble in a dam that every girl's just right around. Like, everybody thought I wanted to be a princess, but really I wanted to be a witch.
See, that's what's amazing is, so the other thing that I connected with you was you were talking about being a punk and growing up being a punk. And do you think that rebellion was your in to hearing conspiracy or being open to spiritually to other things? Do you think it was the rebellion
For
that made you
sure.
a punk?
But I was such a goody goody. Like I was like my sister was a cheerleader, so I kind of followed suit. I was pretty preppy at first in school, and then somewhere in like I don't know, like 10th or 11th grade, I think I like listened to Hole and dyed my hair green and got Doc Martens. It was like such a quick like where I think my parents were like, "Oh my God, she's suicidal." But really, I just was like, "I'm a lesbian and I think these girls are gay too." So I think and then I accidentally fell deeper into like legitimate punk rock people when I lived in Los Angeles because my best friend worked for a record label and I was just like into Erica Badu and Jill Scott and this different kind of music. And then I lived in Los Angeles and um it was like Flogging Molly and NoFX and uh Gorgo Bordello and like Side One Dummy and Fat Records and just all these like punk rock bowling and going to shows every
SST.
night and yeah, MXPX and all these like weird in between like dudes. Like I was meeting them and other people knew they were famous, but I had no idea who they were. So I would they were famous, but to me they were my friends, and so they'd get off stage and I would just be like, "Oh my God, I'm so proud of you." Like, "Oh my
Isn't
God, look at you up there."
it?
But they were like, "Yeah, bitch, like I am a millionaire and this is what I do," but I didn't even know who they were.
She said the thing. She said the thing. Can I ask the question?
Ask the question now. He's
You said
gonna.
MXPX, so I have to
Mixed
ask
picks.
you. Yeah, mixed picks. Summer of '69. What is your favorite Christian band?
Did you know this was? This always comes up. Always comes up.
I think
You
I
don't have to
only
answer
know
right away.
one Christian band and song. Even though I did go to Night of Joy once at Disney World, which I know had a lot of Christian bands there, and I wish I could remember one of them.
Michael W.
Um,
Smith, Rebecca
yeah,
St. James.
Michael W. Smith, Friends Are Friends Forever is,
Michael
I
W.
think, a
Smith. Yeah.
total worship song that I remember it used to touch my
The
heart.
tearjerker.
That's
Mhm.
hilarious. I used to play that in when I was playing with in like Christian bands and stuff. We played those those Disney nights. It was terrifying. It was awful. It was
Night of
like
Joy.
it was like eating. It was like Velveeta cheese for every meal.
You
Ugh.
will experience joy.
Yes, eat that joy, just like your Thomas Kincaid processed
Joy,
cheese
joy, joy,
garbage.
joy down in my heart.
See, why didn't we have speed metal versions of that? Like they gave us we got altar boys. No,
I
that,
always thought it was
that's
crazy that God doesn't make any good music for any religion. Like, none of the religions have killer music.
right. It's just, well, I don't know. Tuvan throat singing, I think, is sacred,
It might be sacred, like as to me, if I were going to
but I
go with
can't
like
listen to it all
the
the time.
best religious music, it would be like Baptist Southern church ladies, like dancing
Oh
and
yeah.
sweating and wigs flying off,
Hmm.
like the color purple. God's trying to tell you something.
Hmm.
But even that, I
Yeah.
don't want to listen to. It's like that's the best, maybe that God had to give a religion. I guess Tibetan monks, that would be cool if you had a bunch of monks chanting. I could probably listen to that all day.
Yeah, I can't listen to throat singing. I mean, I do it.
You're like,
but I can't listen. But I do think it's sacred. I think it's that vibration thing that we're talking about. I think it's a healing sound. Those certain instruments, like Lindsay and I were talking about the glass harmonica, Benjamin Franklin's glass harmonica. You play it like
oh,
have you ever seen this thing?
no, but it sounds so cool.
So it's this box and it's got like all your tones. I don't know how many there are, but it's a bunch of glass tubes, like like wine glasses, right, in different sizes, and they're all made in one piece of glass, and they put vinegar on their fingers, just like you do the rim of a wine glass, and the whole thing can be played kind of like a piano with your fingertips in vinegar. But the vibration would make it would make people think they were going crazy, or make them feel sick or something like that. But I've heard it once in a museum, and it was cool. I didn't feel weird or anything, but I thought it was amazing sound, just amazing. But I think that's the only place they exist. But those kinds of manipulations by, like, emotional manipulations by sound, are natural. Like, I don't know if you've ever been like in a concert and just bawled because of everything that was going on. Like, it just hits you where there's like a emotional response to an instrumental music. Like, that just makes you
testicled. My
feel.
balls dropped.
Just now? Congratulations, Alan. You're a big boy.
Just now.
I felt it. Yeah.
Congratulations, bud. Sorry.
It sounded like a glass harmonica.
Yeah, it's a very cool noise. But anyway, that sound is healing. There is a sound. There is healing energy and sound. And that's why we mantra,
Yeah.
Do you do energy healing?
Have
you messed with that? Yeah.
I've had Reiki. I've had Reiki done, and I cried during that. That was pretty intense. I'm not really a crier, and I got this like overwhelming sensation that somebody took my baby. I don't have any kids. I've never had a kid. I don't have any of that reason to have that in my lifetime. But as she was like clearing my chakras and got to my sacral chakra, I felt cramps in my stomach, and then it was just like the first thing that came to my mind. Like, I was so like, I didn't think my baby was dead. It was like somebody took my baby. And part of it in the past life regression, like she got that I was a pirate in a past life. And it made me research pirates. Like, I didn't even know about it. And that I was like, somebody took my baby. Why would I have such a strong attachment to this? And I learned that there was a ton of female pirates, and a lot of them, from getting raped or even faking it, but they would get a stay of execution for a little longer if they were pregnant, because they wouldn't hang a pregnant woman. And so a lot of the women would get pregnant by certain of the dudes that would then choose to maybe keep them alive because they were now the mother of their child.
Yeah, wasn't that the Anne Bonny story?
Anne Bonny, and then she also rode with another pirate named Mary. And so
Right.
Mary actually had her own ship, though. And Mary pretended she was a dude in the British Army for a long time. And Anne Bonny never had her own ship, but they rode with like Calico Jack. And I learned how much human trafficking they freed, and how a lot of the traffickers that they freed would become part, like, their mates on their boat. They got the choice. But there was a lot of human trafficking that was all happening in the Caribbean, all through those islands. It was like some of the first places that slavery ever went. It was before it got to the Americas. And then there's a church in Jamaica where a lot of the pirates were tried and killed. and so their grave sites are there. I want to go there after I found all
Yeah.
this out. But I have this like weird connection to Jamaica too. So um yeah.
How many do you know of? How many do you have memory of?
Past lives.
Yeah, or that you think.
Uh, I've gotten told by three separate people that I was walking around the pyramids, like they could see me in this like Egyptian type thing, and I knew where I was going, like them in my that I knew where I was going. One of the people said that I was like a guard or something at the pyramids and that I would look out into the night and I would say, I see you, like just at darkness, like randomly, just like if there was something there that they would think I saw it or something, which is something weird I do now. But somebody else who did one of my past life regressions said they saw me at like a castle wall at night, like a night, and that I would say out to the darkness, I see you. And I was like, shut up, like in different weird lifetimes. And a weird
Wow.
thing that I have is I'm obsessed with Mary Magdalene, the Virgin Mary, Maria, like it all is the Mar of everything, and it means see. And then if you switch it, the Y usually means you in Latin, and it's the opposite. So it's UC is Mary is UC. And so I always think it's like I see you. It's like the Mary of it all.
So when did you start that? When did you start your catchphrase right there of it
I
all?
always do. Oh, that is totally not mine. It's my Maria 777. I feel like some people give me credit for it, but
Well,
it's
I heard who were you talking? So you were talking to somebody else, and they started doing it too.
or I know I wish I remembered who I was talking to because it might be um
I think in my head I was listening. I was doing it myself, like as I was listening.
I know it's totally my Maria 777. She has an awesome podcast and she just has one of these really infectious voices and a few catchphrases, and of it all is like the perfect way in our sphere when you're talking about things that you like you're about to talk about the Clintons and you're like I don't know and the Arkansas Epstein Island of it all, but anyways, back to Monica Lewinsky. It's like you can just throw in these things that you can blanketly not have to go into all of it, but we all know, so you can just be like I don't know in the timeline, quantum of it all.
See, and that's the stuff that's that shorthand that all of us kind of have to have if we're going to have these conversations because we can't explain everything.
It's too much.
It's too much. I can't go into who is Jeffrey Epstein to anybody. Like if you don't know, I don't know. So I remember talking about it's like UFOs. Like I used to have this kind of encyclopedic knowledge of UFO abductions, right? Because I kind of thought I might have been at one point, because I had some weird shit happen. And so I kind of studied it all. I knew all of it. And then when my father-in-law was passing away, my wife took care of him as he was dying. And like a week before he died, he was like, oh yeah, it's like that neighbor of mine. He says he was abducted by aliens. I always believed him. And I was like, oh, who's that? And he's like, my, what's his name? Barney Hill. I'm like, what? No. He's like, yeah, Barney is. Yes.
You're like,
There
no
was a
way.
mixed race couple. And so they lived over in Exeter, it was my neighbor. And then I'm like, Betty and Barney Hill, that you knew them? He's like, yeah. Oh yeah, we had dinner and stuff. And then my wife was
Pancakes.
like, yeah. Hey, yeah, maybe my wife was fed fairy pancakes, and that's why she's here with me. Because
Their granddaughter, Angela, is a UFC fighter.
oh really?
Yeah.
Is
And
she Is she, what's her name's daughter?
She's
The author? Oh, you made it again. Nope. Nope.
Technological.
hello.
There
Hi.
it is.
There we go.
Okay, hold on. Let me make sure it's locked now.
In the meantime, we're talking about Mary in chat. Mary Totten, merit, or merit. That word is very important to maritime law. And Mary
Okay,
Totten
yes.
is the beloved of the stem. She's the one they think was Scotia. That's from Krista in chat. So Reckmeyer was the vizier to Thutmose III and Amenhotep II, and was as such the power behind the throne. His wife was Merit, Merit, or Merit, Meryt. In hieroglyphs, her name is the same as the suffix described in the previous page, meaning lover of truth. So there is the connection to truth loving and the name Mary.
Ah, hey, there you go.
Wow. Can you guys hear me now?
We hear you.
Yes. So
That's crazy. Yeah, maritime too. Sea, mare, mar,
the
mer. I
ocean.
think mer means sea too.
Mhm.
Yep. And we were getting into Palm as well. You talked about Palm Beach, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
The Latin name of Palmyra, of Tamar, Tadmar, the Semitic name Tadmar, is linked to the Semitic term for palm. And that gets back to QAnon, or Canaanites, and the red dye. Henna is also a red dye.
You know, weren't we just talking about the oceans and the purple being a reference to the oceans because of the royal what are they it's the purple dye that comes from the shells, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've been ocean signaling. They've been ocean signaling a lot. Kind of a lot.
Terramar Project. Does that ring a bell with anyone?
No, what is that?
Mm-mm.
Ghislaine Maxwell.
Terramar?
Terramar.
I don't know that one. Was that the shell company? What is that?
That's our homework. What is Terramar?
Oh, okay. This is what Alan does. He gets wound up on something like this and then reports back.
Is it our submarine?
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
It's funny. I know like Mar, like the Olympus that comes up all the time. Um, I think it's funny, like Tartarus, Tartar, Tar, um, which is really just the Lemuria and all these kind of lands that they didn't know about before they got to. And it's a really, I think there's definitely ancient antiquitech from all over the world that was hidden and stolen and these kind of things. And there is some things about the Tatarian work that I get down with. But I do think some of the maps and stuff we find of even Olympus to what that means to Atlantis and these Poseidon and these god worship type things of, or Tataria to Tartarus, which is actually a god of chaos and all goes back to that. I think a lot of this stuff we're finding like maps that are like worshiping these other things that we aren't well, it's like everything's kind of getting glummed together because we've been so lied to about our history that it's getting to be gummy bottlenecks towards some of these areas when I even try to broach them. So some of these things, as far as conspiracy goes, I don't tend to delve into as much. But when
Yeah.
you were like the Tarimar, the Tarimar. It was like those two, it's like goosh, these like two big words like tard, retard, tartar sauce.
Let them have that tartar sauce. Wasn't it
Fish sticks.
Mr. Burns?
Mm.
Fish sticks, yeah.
Fish sticks back to Atlantis.
But that's the thing too, that I think a lot of us are coming to with all that a lot of these things, the minutia isn't mattering for us. Like, I hear one more fucking bullshit lie about goddamn masks and vaccines, and I'm done. I'm done talking about it. I'm done with it. I don't want to hear anything else. I want to dig deep in myself, dig out the bullshit that I keep shoving back down, figure out what those holes are. And I'd rather do that. That's where we're gonna advance. It's not out there. We're not gonna save the world's problems by figuring out all the conspiracies, because even though we can't ignore them, it's idiocy if we ignore it, but they can't let it consume us.
All the ideas, whether it's firmament, space, simulation, puddle theory, Agartha, whatever idea you want to take, somewhere we're trapped inside something. That's all of them just seem like a way that we're trapped inside something, like someone's idea of control.
That's the thing. We got to, I was in a meeting yesterday with a bunch of teachers. You know, the mentality of teachers, you will know this is a painful thing to be stuck in a room with hundreds of teachers. But we had to do team building exercises and talk. So we had to
icebreakers.
Yes, we had to write down our, goals for the year or whatever in our small groups. And my first goal was escape the matrix, and then, then get district vehicle and then asset management system or whatever. But if I break the matrix, all of it falls together. Like, you people don't understand. I'm not kidding. Just the blank stares of, what? Yeah, no, I seriously, escape the matrix is number one. Just to get people thinking, and they just they don't even go there. Like, oh, right. Oh, you're funny. You're a funny guy. Like, no, you really should be looking bigger than your stupid budget. I know that's what we're here for, but I don't care. I don't care about that stuff anymore.
It's so hard.
It's so hard.
At the end of my I felt like the mask kind of helped me with the spiritual awakening, because it forced me to like walk away from like the job, my hamster wheel job, that it was like, but you make this much money and you have 401k and you have retirement and a company car. How could you walk away from all this stuff? And it was just like, ooh, I don't want a mask. I just don't want a mask. Like, it was really that's it. And everything about my job was gross and killing me I was a medical marketer. Like, what a nightmare. And yeah, what a nightmare.
Really? You sold medications?
No, I did not. There is so much different kinds of medical marketing that happens than just pharmaceuticals. But everything's bullshit and has hands in pockets and taking somehow money out of Medicare, Medicaid, insurance. Like, doctors buy big machines that then they have to pay off. So then they have marketers that sell those big procedures to other doctors so doctors can refer to it. And then doctors get kickbacks for referrals. And then other doctors, refer to healthcare, and then healthcare, then people can stay at home, and then they need a different set of nurses and doctors, and everyone needs to sign off on this thing so the insurances can all get paid and everyone can have their hand in the pocket, and the marketer can drive a company car and, get bonuses because somebody's signing up for these things. And I always said I knew there was a huge problem in medicine because all of the amount of marketers I knew that had jobs and were just like drinking and eating on the company dime, chatting about bullshit while they were selling bullshit. Yeah, it was a soul crushing job. But, you know,
Nice.
I'm glad I
Yeah.
did it for enough time, just long enough to like walk off the cliff.
To see how dirty the system is.
Yeah, it was. I knew a lot of great people in it. I knew a lot of great, intelligent people with their hands tied.
Yeah.
And then the same to see people that call themselves smart and they, they all sign their oaths and they all mean well. But to watch them be no different than every other regurgitator I'd ever met in my whole life and just keep chewing the narrative curd and spitting it out. And even, I mean, day one, I never bought this. So, and I would talk to doctors that were, specialty in disease, and they didn't buy this. So then to watch them 2 weeks later stand at the front of the heads of these, hospitals and regurgitate a spiel that they were reading off paper that came from someone they didn't know, but I knew they didn't believe it because we had just talked about it with everything from school with their virus study and their this and that and whatever, just to see how quickly no one wanted to be ostracized. And it I the most frightening thing of the whole thing is like being inside medicine when you're like, oh, these people are supposed to help you. But most of the people inside medicine that have been inside it long enough will be like, oh my God, it's always practicing medicine. We were killing people for 10 years. And then the next 10 years, we were like, ooh,
Mhm.
that was really bad that we were giving them that medication after that. We didn't know we were actually adding to their high blood pressure. It's like they don't know what they're doing most of the time. And it's whoever has the best marketer for the best medicine or machine is what the hospital uses and pushes.
Yep.
So if you take cancer, the biggest killer, um, putting heavy doses of poison or heavy doses of radiation into any living being is never the best way to cure it, but it's the cheapest way to cure it. So you pay for insurance your whole life. And if you get this cancer, they hopefully cure you cheaply. And if they don't cure you cheaply, you mean more to them dead because your payout to the family $150,000 that would be like 6 months in a hospital, so they don't want that. So it actually behooves them to give you something like chemo or radiation and kill you because otherwise they have to pay for you to stay alive and they don't want that. And if they tell you, hey, drink water and eat broccoli, the whole medical system goes to hell. They can't tell you that. So it's
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. See, I was on a CPAP for years. I trying to think of, I think it might have been 10 years I was on a CPAP machine and I had to pay for it. Like my insurance had to continually pay for that thing, like a subscription or something. I probably bought like 30 of those over the years, like as much as they had to pay out. What a scam. But I probably did need it at the time because I was in bad shape, man. I was like 85 pounds heavier and couldn't breathe. I couldn't sleep. But it wasn't just the breathing, it was everything. But see, once I started eating whole fats, grass fed, everything, and basically fats and vegetables, like everything like fell into place. Like all my health level, all the hormones and stuff that were so screwed up in my brain, and it all kind of leveled out. But they didn't tell me that. The medical system just gave me another drug and another drug and another drug. When I got off of everything, I went back and checked the pharmacy. There were 22 open medications that I had been written over the last few years. It was I think the longest you can keep a prescription is 6 months anymore, right? So for the last 6 months before I got off everything, they were just piling up stuff. I had 22 at one time. Like, how do we not see that this is poisoning us? I instinctively eventually just got sick of everything, and I wasn't going to play the game anymore. And it sucked, but like if everybody could if I could tell everybody, just, get on high fat, start meditating, and stop eating your bullshit food, it fixes a myriad of problems. All of a sudden, we don't have to have the medical system that we have that keeps poisoning us. Anyway, that's my health rant. Thank you.
I agree. There's no they don't want anyone to be healthy, and that's what I think is so funny with the COVID is there's never been a rung of homeless people deaths ever, and in the history of all time that you've ever known homeless people, you've never seen the government bend over backwards to try to feed them, clothe them, house them, anything, but they're going to give them free COVID vaccines. Like, what are we talking about?
Oh, but they're so benevolent. Where don't we know? Don't we know how benevolent they are?
That one used
They
to be
told
my
us so.
favorite question to ask people. Could you ever live under a benevolent dictator? And people would get so upset about it. That doesn't even make any sense. Why would you even ask me that? And I'm like, I could.
Yeah.
I'm like, I could. It's got to be better than any system I've seen in my lifetime.
Right?
Like
Man.
somebody that really had your best interest of the whole at heart and was like, no, we're not going to do this today. Like, what would a benevolent dictator be like?
We
Yeah,
can
nobody
imagine
would-
theocracy. It would be
an actual theocracy,
a true theocracy.
true theocracy.
One nation
Oh,
under
don't we
God,
have one?
indivisible.
We have one, Alan.
Do
Hey, so are you cool to hang out for a little bit more? Or
Yeah.
do you have a hey,
Yeah.
do you have this, Chaney?
No,
Lindsay's book, All
no.
Endings. So we use it kind of like towards the end, and it like do a bibliomancy kind of thing, and it nails it every single time. So, like, have you seen her use it before?
No.
Okay.
I'm a
So-
bad friend. I haven't
So-
read any of Lindsay's books.
I know. I try.
I don't have a piece of organite. I would lie if I said there wasn't a piece of organite somewhere in my house because I have friends that have had readings with Lindsay.
So I started trying to make one, the organite. We'll see how that goes. Anyway. Oh, dude. Owls in the night. Sometimes the biggest question on our mind stops us from truly examining our beliefs is simple. Why would they do this to us? Good people often can see how dark and twisted some have become. It is nearly impossible for us to imagine the lengths of might go in order to ensnare us and keep their dominion indefinitely. It is often least desirable to look deep inside of ourselves and see the shadow, but we must. We must remember that humans are capable of heartbreaking and beautiful goodness, and that we are equally as capable of staggering and horrifying darkness. Do not make the mistake of believing that those who have sought and taken power have done it for benevolent reasons. Do not make the mistake of believing that your own goodness is universal. And remember that the easiest prey is the prey that does not notice the predator exists. And then take heart, because once your eyes are open, you can protect yourself from any danger that exists. Be sovereign, awake, and bold. And until you find the owl hunting you in the night, be wary.
That's awesome.
Like somehow it brings it together. It's amazing. So thank you, Lindsay. Thank you. Thank you for writing that. Thank you for doing this, Chaney. I love Jim and I talk about this all the time, but like just connecting with people that aren't afraid to go there, to go whatever that next thing is, knowing that there's always something more. And
I heard
to think
something
about that next
yesterday,
thing.
and I just think it says when you heal aloud, you help somebody not die in silence.
Mm.
Yeah, I saw a study. It was a psychological study where they would have a subject, and they would come into a little room, and they thought that they were being tested on something on a computer. So they were listening to or they were doing a test, like pushing some buttons on a computer. And outside of the room, which was part of the experiment, they had like a workman who was on a ladder, working on a ladder, and they would fall off the ladder and like be like, oh, ow, ah. And the person, usually when they were by themselves, most of the time they would run out and they would check on the person to make sure if they were okay. But another part of the experiment was they had two other people in there. They were also in on the experiment. They were also doing the test on the computer. And when that person, the workman, would fall off the ladder out in the hallway and be like, ow, the subject would look over and see the other two people that he thought or she thought were the subjects, and they didn't react at all. They just stayed there on their computer and didn't touch anything. And most of the time, the subject would just ignore the person outside. It's like 80% of the time, the person would ignore the person outside. And that's really what we need to make our change in the world, is to pay attention to, everybody, and look out, and don't look to react for other people. We need to make the example and lead other people to this action, whatever it is, to notice things, to see things. That's why we need to talk about it. That's why it's important that we're here doing this, because if we don't call things out and bring attention to them, who's to say if anybody's gonna pay attention?
Well, that's that observer effect thing again, that I keep going back to, the biocentrism, man. It's that observer effect, that double slit experiment, that every single time that you're observing something, it's changing that thing. Like, we are making this reality. Whatever we're doing here, this is making something, and it didn't happen until we observed it, until we saw it, till we experienced it. It's the experience of the thing that this is how we know we're God. Our God, the God that is all of us, is us. We are the creators, because as we're observing this, we're experiencing this. That's what's making it real. We're creating it. You're creating it, because we're not just this. Like, I love how Alex Sakara says the meat robot in a meaningless universe. They want to reduce us down to that. And I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't get it. It's not you. This isn't us. This isn't you. Like, this isn't you, but this is you. This is you.
And we're not insignificant. We are
we're
each one of us is important.
beings,
Powerful.
man.
Yeah.
Completely amazingly powerful.
That's why they want to control the TVs and control the narrative. Sometimes I don't think it was predictive programming at all for 9/11. I think they showed it on the TV enough to us until they convinced us it happens, and then we make it happen. I think we're that powerful for big events like that. And that's why they need to convince us World War III is coming. They have to convince us the world's dying. They have to convince, like, whatever the certain tipping point of the population is for everything, that is what creates the thing. It's probably why they don't want us to, whatever we're on, they're not going to let us go to the edge of it, because then we create more of it, and they don't want that. Each generation, if they could, they would just keep closing us off into a smaller little quadrant of wherever we're at, and easier control. like wipe away anything that remembers history, raise the young up new, that they have no attachment to that land, and everything becomes a fairy tale.
Yeah, the world is infinite inside of our heads and outside of our heads, but it's not insignificant.
But I
And
No,
think
but if you
there's like
redo,
a
yeah, if you
danger
reduce it
in
down, it's terrible.
there's something with the go within, go within, go within, go within. Just because it's been told to us so much, I got to think it's a psyop too. And
Yeah.
so much of that, I think maybe you go in for answers, but so many people are going in for everything. And I really just think you expand God and yourself by loving externally. I think so many
Absolutely.
people are like self-love, self-care, self, and then you find your face in a gutter and you've been so worried telling yourself you're fucking God and you're God in a gutter and now no one's there to pull you out.
But that's
And so
because
yeah.
your God is you. You don't you think of yourself as a God, not
Mhm.
God. Like there's this narcissism God that where like you're talking about, there's self-care and I'm gonna go get a mani-pedi and I deserve this kind of thing. But that's not what self-care is about. Self-care is about actually loving yourself enough to not to eat that shitty food.
And I think even loving your flesh and even loving your right now, I think there's such a danger, even like in the new age movement, we hear like past lives and timelines and all these things. And then all of a sudden, they're all becoming other ways for you to not be present right here, right now, for you to not hear your right heel, you to not heal right here, right now trauma. I'm so worried about healing my pirate life. I'm not dealing with my relationship with my mother. And this is like real
Yeah,
stuff in the new age world that I think we're
yeah,
getting to. If you look at the beginning of time to now, there used to be a God of everything. They used to treat the water like God and the air like God and chaos like God and order like God. They used to treat everything like God. And somewhere as time has gone on, there's gotten less and less and less God until there's one God. And now they're trying to create it that we're God. I think the second we're so vulnerable, the second they convince us that we're God, God is gone. And then God's the computer, and that's that. And then we're
well,
going to download.
what's the coolest thing is I think about that, like how I've come from being a baby Christian and like and then having another like spiritual understanding, right? You know, you're like, oh God, that can't be, you know, you run all those options over in your head over and over and over again. And then you find another thing that you don't believe in. You found out that that thing wasn't true. So you took it, threw that away. And then you found out another level. I'm looking forward to how, for the time where I think that everything that I thought now is bullshit because I learned so much more that I'm looking back at myself like I am my 16-year-old self going, wow.
I'll tell you a
You,
spiritual one I think is bullshit that I know is a big one that I see a lot of people cling on to. Detachment. I think detachment is
a psyop to get us into a socialist system? Maybe.
yeah, well, I just think that's a a word not created for mothers. So right away, if you
Oh,
tell me the
yeah.
most spiritual thing on the portal to life, literally can't spiritually detach from that. So if you can detach from that, I would say you're spiritually void, not spiritually anchored. And there's this huge thing with like the more you detach, the less sorrow you have. Sorrow is part of love. Sorrow, you don't have sorrow unless you love something, unless you have empathy for
That's
it.
right.
So I think people need to stop fearing the sorrow and stop fearing being attached and being in love. They should be in love. And it's
Yes.
heartbreaking sometimes. Sometimes
Yes.
it's heartbreaking to really feel the pain of a stranger, or even more so, feel the pain of a friend. But fucking fall in love. Stop detaching from everything.
Be vulnerable,
Yeah. Be authentic. Be real.
authentic. Oh my God.
And I even,
And
you know,
and that's
that
even
like the baby Christian idea too. I think the whole idea of Christianity is backward because you cannot have a true Christ experience until you have your God experience. And once you realize you have a God experience, then becoming God in flesh is the most divine experience you could possibly have. But you can't have it first and worship God in flesh until you realize you're God to walk in flesh. And so it's this whole weird backward thing that is actually a really divine, beautiful, like I think all religions exist. I think they kind of exist on top of each other. Um, I think Christ's walk could be the most divine because getting to that point of forgiveness and forgiving your enemies and then actually being crucified in your death, like enjoying life up to the point of death, of orgasm, of like, I want to feel every nail go into every bit of my flesh. That's how a God would choose to die. Like a God
Yeah.
would not choose to die of old age, like on my last breath and I was 88. No, a God would choose to go out in a way of feeling every bit of death. And he would hang from his flesh and the vultures would circle him. And there would be two women, Mary Magdalene and Virgin Mary, his mother, supposedly staring at him, wanting to turn away with everything they were, these witches, but they stared at him because it relieved him to keep that eye contact. But I also feel like if any of his journey were true at all, then he sat next to Mary Magdalene, maybe the love of his life, and never fucking fornicated with her at all. And to be able to withstand that kind of fucking sexual energy and that kind of in love and never follow through with somebody who we're told is a whore and gave it to everyone, but to have that kind of love together and never follow through, I feel like sitting on a cross was probably easy for him to look at her that last time and leave the world never feeling her all the way. Like it would have been everything. I don't know. That's really romantic idea of Christianity, but I think you have to be God first before you could
Yeah.
really appreciate Christ.
The Romans gave us
That's
the
beautiful.
romantic idea of Christianity.
Romantic.
Mhm.
Well, if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have had that cross death anyway. And everyone wants to blame the Jews.
That's awesome. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate this, Chaney. That was
Yeah, I'll hang
beautiful.
out whenever. I like hanging out late nights. I'm usually up really late.
Oh, that's cool. Because this is what we do. Like these things, I don't know, these guys stay on till whenever sometimes.
Whenever. We have a question in chat. Have you guys been keeping up with the chat?
No, sometimes I get
can't
nervous to look
multitask
down
well.
at the chat.
Don't
Me
look at the
too.
chat.
Sometimes I get really
it too.
nervous. I don't want to know who's in the chat. I don't want.
The idea of the baby and like where did the baby go and the missing baby and motherhood and all of that topic kind of goes back to Mary and what we were talking about in chat about the Virgin Mary, the versions of Mary, the archetype of Mary, and the mother and mothering process and bringing to birth something. So Oswald Spengler wanted to know about Chaney's opinion of artificial insemination for lesbians.
I mean, I guess it's the same as artificial insemination for anyone. There's probably enough kids out there that need a parent. So I don't know why you have to get science involved. I don't judge anyone that has gotten science involved in anything that they've done, but I'm not into children. It's not my thing. But if I were, I would get a kid the exact same way I'd get a dog, and I probably wouldn't get a puppy. I would be like, oh, look at this. Somebody didn't take care of this already. So, yeah, I'm not opposed to it. But I just think if you believe in some kind of natural thing that's happening in the world, then maybe sometimes two moms isn't the worst thing for a kid to have. And why does a lady need to like include some other random semen into her relationship so her and another lady or two men could have a kid? I never under really stood that. And I've had people say like to me and my wife, like, oh, would you get this kind of like, because I was like, oh, if we ever did that, I would definitely get like brown or black sperm and mix it with one of us. We're both like Caucasian women. I'm like, it would be more interesting. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, but wouldn't you want it to look like you guys? And I'm like, so we can fool people into thinking that we conceived a child. Like, I just always thought that was a crazy idea. Like, looking through a book to find a dude who looks like me, to be like, oh, or like, here, you take my egg and you carry it in your belly. So then I don't, it's too much. It's too much. So, yeah, that was the long and short. But I do think Mary, virgin used to just mean not married. Um, and if she was, um, if she divinely conceived, if you got all your chakras in line in some place of energy and could divinely conceive, what the fuck does Joseph have anything to do with the story? It's just about her and God and whatever happened. She had Joseph has nothing to do with the story. And if he has a percent to do with the story, then every single person she met in her life and had relations with and energies they gave her and meditation she did and, what had to do with that birth too. So, yeah, divine conception is ridiculous that Joseph's even brought up.
Did you
Genesis?
Have you ever gotten into the hey Alan, what's that? What's the extra books of the Bible? What's it called?
Q?
No, it's the
Q gospel.
the Q gospel, the gospel according to
The
Q.
lost books of Q. You haven't heard of the lost books of Q?
No, what is that?
Oh, well, there's a rabbit hole for you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's totally lost books out of the Bible, like
like
Mark and Thomas, and they say John wasn't supposed to be the book of 316, or like the first book of Christ, and so the real writings of Christ were completely different than the way they were sold with those four dudes. I don't know. It's a lot.
I don't think I've heard of it as that. I think what's it called, Alan?
The source.
Like Gospel of Thomas is in those.
The Apocryphal Gospels.
Apocryphas, yeah. Thank you. Yep. Is that the same thing as the Qs? Or the Nag Hammadis?
It's like the source, I think is what it's called. Q, source gospel.
Yeah,
no, it's weird. It actually was something that used to be easy to find when you talk about religions and Christianity, but because of QAnon, it's one of those really hard things to find now, which is so ridiculous. Right. And one really has nothing to do with the other. Like one has nothing to do with the other, but it is. I do think Q as a symbol is interesting throughout time. The noose of it all, even the way they tried to get rid of nooses in our society with that whole Bubba NASCAR bringing up racism again with it. But if you look at the Egyptians and how they used to have the letter Q, it was always used with the noose, and the Romans didn't have a letter Q. So I think somewhere there's an Egyptian like Kemet with the Romans when they took over, and the Egyptian we know. And then there's somewhere also like a pagan Protestant takeover of the Catholic Church. These two huge big things somewhere in history crumble everything else. So, and then all of that's being said with zero knowledge of what happened anywhere in China except for some Marco Polo books. Like zero knowledge of any ancient China, anything Far East. We really have no knowledge of every single book. Even if you look up like Manly P. Hawes' Secret Teachings of All Ages and you open up your copy, all the latest presses, it might say like the printing houses in Los Angeles, but the press came from China. So even these books that like geeky nerds like us are looking for all these symbolisms, there's still so much Far East stuff we're missing, which is also crazy because that's where all this Tataria stuff's coming from. And that's where Tataria is written on maps. But even if you look into the stone structures of China and like their dragons, I always go back to the Marco Polo because I just think dinosaurs are so ridiculous, but dragons aren't real.
Sure, it keeps coming back to dragons too. Like we were talking about the Q movie last week about there was a feathered serpent thing, like Quetzalcoatl.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Quetzalcoatl. Yep.
That's Mexico, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's at is it Mayan? I think it's Mayan, not Aztec.
And it also
it-
looks like what's the they have that winged looking dude through so many religions. It's not the Enki and El. What's the other? Not the Epic of Gilgamesh. Shit. My brain's like doing the short circuit where all the like old book gods, but I know they all
Right.
look alike and they're holding a purse with the wings.
Oh yeah.
Well, they all kind of look
I know
like
what you're
him.
talking about. Yeah. It's all in the Egyptian hieroglyphs too. That there's a winged figure with a purse all the time.
Yeah, like always holding a purse out in front of it. But it all
Yeah.
kind of looks like that. But
What was
out
the
of the
purse?
I don't
remember what
know. But even out of all this time with Q, I never, and even knowing that God, I would never even be able to say the name. I never even put the two together, that like the God Q of, and yeah, the winged serpent.
I wonder if that has to do with the because the Q is an Ouroboros is a Q too, right?
A broken Ouroboros would be, which is the goal. Like if you were to take a
Right.
slice right through us, just repeating the wheel over and over again, it would be a
Right.
Q.
I wonder if that's a signaling of a time thing. Like
That's what I always
the
like
breaking
to.
the breaking of the
Quantumly, it's the symbol we all decided to remember. It doesn't matter how you feel about the movement. It doesn't matter how you feel about a president. It doesn't matter how you feel about any of this three-dimensional bullshit. It's just the symbol collectively that we all decided to fucking remember to wake up.
Yeah.
That's just what I think of it. I think it's quantum.
There's the Q again. And I think we're going to figure out light.
John McAfee says light is time.
And they're all waves. And they're all harmonics.
And if we're light,
it's all sound.
Do we buy time if they drink our blood?
It's all about time. Yeah. See, it's
Chronos.
time.
It's still time again. It's all Saturn.
Right. Chronos, there's I don't know. It's all coming back. I don't know what that's signaling to, but it's happening. Whatever's happening.
It is weird that you can see Saturn with your naked eye. You can see Jupiter and Saturn with your naked, like a telescope, your naked eye, and like a cheap Walmart telescope. But Mars and Venus, which everything in the logic and their numbers, if I run on their numbers, you can't see them at all, no matter how close. They always look like a flashlight underwater. No, so it is crazy.
Can you not see Mars?
It looks like a red vibration. Like it looks like a red sound bowl.
Right.
Yeah. It's not the same, like but I can look at,
you can see.
You can see a dot of red, and in a telescope, it looks like a vibration. But Saturn, you can see a dot in the sky, and then through a telescope, it looks like a drawing of Saturn. It's insane.
It is crazy. Yeah, because in Kansas, like everybody has telescopes. They're all sky junkies in Kansas because that's all you have to do. That's all you do is all you have is sky. Everything's flat. The ground is completely worthless and boring. Other than, I mean, you can grow shit there. We can't grow stuff here, but we got mountains, so we don't care about the sky as much. But that's all they have to do in Kansas. So everybody's got these giant telescopes. And I remember looking at my neighbor's telescopes, seeing Saturn, and going, "Wow, that looks like a painting." It's crazy.
It's nuts. And we should have a blue ring around us if everything from their numbers is true. Like this is the part of the problem with like COVID or space or the world population or the national debt. I'm running on your numbers and it doesn't make sense. Like, so if I just, we should have a blue ring around us. The way Saturn looks, we should have a ring that, like, we're a water planet, this only water planet in the solar system. but there's telescopes they sent out that are older than all of us, made of tinfoil, that send back zeros and ones, that have discovered so many more Earths, just so you know. Like, this shit's stupid to me. Black holes are stupid to me. It doesn't, it logically, how did we send an instrument close enough to this thing that didn't get sucked into this thing, but sent us, and wherever this black hole is, that's far enough away to not suck us into it, or our solar system into it, that sucked our satellite into it. Our satellite still got us the zeros and ones back that we know this thing is there. Okay. It's just, it just sounds like a science fiction novel. It's the exact same way they wrote about the Titanic and then the Titanic. They wrote about dinosaurs and then dinosaurs. They wrote about space and then space. And so their numbers just don't logically make sense. Like, even their story of how the moon got there. This rogue planet hit Earth, knocks a chunk off, comes by again, hits that chunk into a perfect orbit so that the chunk never comes back to Earth and it just doesn't float off into space. Doesn't make sense with any other moon in the solar system size wise. And it just, everything spins long enough to become a perfect circle. Amen. It's like, that doesn't make sense. Because where's that rogue planet? Shouldn't we be so fucking worried about that every year, that the moon making planet is going to come around again?
Yeah, it's too perfect. It's too perfect.
Are we reaching our sustainable development goals?
So you're talking Jim's language here, right?
Yeah. No. It's funny. Everybody's there's cities are the only things that are overcrowded. Like, there's enough land out here for everybody to have a spot. And it'd be possible now with the internet for us all to be separated yet still be together. So it doesn't make sense why everybody's packed into cities. And they're the ones that are pushing for, the overcrowding. Only feels overcrowded in cities. And then in the big cities, people get all kinds of weird depression and stuff like that. The mouse utopia experiment.
I can't do big cities anymore. As my wife and I were talking about selling our house because my daughter moved out, and so we've got like all this space we don't use. It's like going to waste because I don't take care of it. I'm a terrible homeowner. Like the thing is falling apart around me because I just couldn't care less, and I need to redo my bathrooms because this guy I had doing repairs ruined everything, and now I have to go back and do it. But we want to leave is the point. And like, going to a city sounds like the freshest hell to me anymore. I can't get away from people fast enough. And just that this happens to me, like, just that we're able to talk about this stuff, like find Jim Maiden's brain and Barsky and Allen and Snake Jones and Chaney and Lindsay and Johnny, and like, just that we get to know each other. And because I don't know how this is happening, but I don't care. I like it. This is what I want to do. I don't want to be around those people who can't think. I would rather be in a Zoom call with you guys than in a room with a connected person who's not thinking, who's just not all there. And that's terrible. Like, that part disturbs me.
It's the part of the spiritual awakening. The more, I think, the higher you vibe, like the more woke you get, the lonelier it is. And so I have to think, if everything is divine, whatever energies are placed in certain places on the planet, like ley lines, It's all divinely done. And so it just seems that the highest vibing people are the furthest away from each other, probably. And the lowest vibing people can find tons of themselves.
That makes sense.
That does make sense. That makes a lot of sense, especially when you think about the sympathetic vibration. You know, when you put the metronomes together and they all start to sync up. You know, and that's how it's happening. It's the vibrations, man. It's all what's the fucking word? I can't say that word. Fractilinear. That's the word.
That's a good word.
Yeah, we're fractilinear tuning forks.
That's right. We are.
Yeah.
It's all about the fractals, man, all the way down. Hey, I was going to show you guys something.
It's all about multi-contextuality.
I'm going to show you guys. Oh, here it is. I don't know if you can see this. That is
a little mouse.
Oops. It's the kangaroo rat that my dog brought in that I had to nurse for 2 days until so I fed him with formula and a paintbrush. It was adorable.
And it's
a little baby kangaroo rat.
And it's all good.
He's all good. He's fine. This is amazing. Like my dog brought him in from the. Oh, I already told. I didn't tell you, but my dog saved it from the flooded backyard and came in, protecting something in her mouth, and like dropped this baby drowned rat on the floor. I'm like, crap! So I had to take care of it. And kangaroo rats are nocturnal, so they'll keep you up at night, every night.
Oh wow!
Every single night. But he was adorable, and he survived. He's doing good.
I heard a thing, if you put a box on your desk, your cat will sit in it instead of being on your computer.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Like any kind of box, because if it fits, it sits. That's the cat rule. They have to figure out if they fit.
Yeah, I should have put him outside before going live, because he usually tries to get right on my keyboard. They love keyboards, don't they?
Keyboard cat.
Out. Here, hop down.
This is Dinky, the mouse savior. Oh, baby.
Oh, he's
Obviously,
pretty.
maternal instinct.
That's a good heart.
You look uncomfortable. Okay.
They love being a part of things.
Yeah, I have 2 cats and 2 dogs. I have 2 dogs that are close to the end of their dog lives that I've had forever. One of them's like 16 or 17 and the other one's like 12. And I won't dog again. I think they're great, but they're just a little dirtier than I'm headed. I want to walk around my house barefoot, and I feel like my dogs are always bringing in stuff. I do adore cats, though. It's probably just naturally witchy. So I have 2 cats, and I may have cats again, but I do think I want guilt-free travel. So I think even life after this rung of animals, I will have like a decade of no animals.
Yeah, it's hard to travel with animals. It's a whole thing. Got to find
some guilt.
Yeah. Yeah, and they miss you. Do you know why witches? Do you know why witches have black cats?
No.
It's because their hair doesn't show up on their witch outfits.
Oh, I always thought it was, I have this thing that I'm like, witches don't really make spells. It was also that when men found the spells, it would just freak them out. So they would make the spell ingredients just to make them laugh. And that's why there's like still the thing like women aren't funny, or they say witches cackle, because one of the key alchemies of spell casting is laughter. And so witches would write these fucking spells just to make each other laugh, but really they would use the shit that their cats brought home as their spell ingredients. So they'd be like an eye of newt, a tail of a rat, whatever. But it was just all the weird shit their cats were bringing them. And so one of the things me and my coven does when we sit around and just try to laugh is what would be the funniest spell ingredient to write down, that people are like, what? So far, our favorite one is octopus tears.
Ooh.
Because do you octopus cry? And if they do, how do you find it in a salty ocean? It's just almost an impossible task.
It's freshwater.
Yeah, it's funny. And then sometimes as a lesbian witch, I'll say, I can make octopus cry.
Have you seen My Octopus Teacher?
No, I have a Netflix. Anything on Netflix that everyone watches, I call a Tiger King. And so I think there's just a real something that's coming up for us that we're supposed to internally remember, know, symbolize, and then they fill it so that we all automatically just think of that thing. So the octopus teacher was definitely a big one. They want to keep shoving that octopus look and symbolism in our face. I always think of that movie with Amy Adams, where the octopus come down and talk to her in the circular language.
It's the Age of Cthulhu.
Yes, totally. It's all that kind of, and even the circular language of it. They always try to push circle on us, like Tom Hanks, the circle and the target. And I don't know what all the symbolism is, but I can see all the stuff they use. And for some reason, octopus just doesn't sit right with me. It seems to be one of their things. So the octopus teacher, I heard all the story about it, and everyone's like, what a beautiful story. And isn't it great? This guy got to partake in this octopus's life. And I'm like, yeah, but how do we know he didn't ruin the octopus's life the whole entire time?
Oh yeah, I think about that with the owls. Like, what kind of effect am I doing on them by observing them? But the thing is they're observing me. Like, that's how I found them. Is they were just watching me for weeks. And so, see how I feel a connection because they chose me, like I feel like that's like a sacred honor. So I don't know how that would be with an octopus, that guy's particular thing, but them using that documentary, you're right. Like, we saw it again just before COVID, like when they just announced it, there was tons of documentaries about plagues and all communicable diseases, and the big movies just before like 2019 were all about that stuff.
And they all use, don't worry about a thing. Every little thing's gonna be all right. Every one of them, because I'm like, that song must hit us in such a good 432. Bob Marley, like perfect, boo, that they had to like just crush it. Apocalypse, apocalypse, apocalypse.
Yeah, they're using it. Yeah, that one everywhere. Like, isn't that in the Tomorrow War too?
I just felt like right when 2020 happened, every preview was like the world's coming to an end with that song. I was like,
yeah,
what's happening?
That's
all
amazing.
The talk of octopus tears reminds me of Ursula and the Little Mermaid and how she needs to take Ariel's voice.
Poor unfortunate soul. And convince her into legs.
Isn't that Brittany?
Brittany's a big, huge key right now.
Yeah. What? Like that's really becoming a thing. Who'd have thought, man, when she was a Musketeer, that she'd have been sacrificed?
I think it's to set up a legal precedent.
I hope so. I hope
hope
Brittany's a keystone.
Yes.
If Brittany pops, Hollywood pops, Disney pops, Epstein Island pops, uh, Madonna, Lady Gaga, Justin Timberlake Super Bowls. I mean, if you want to, Britney is the tip of the spears. I think her legal precedents. I even think the powers that be, if Britney is allowed to speak, the powers that be are no longer in control. Like she's proof positive to me, like proof positive that the power, like this new world order isn't happening to me. This is sloppy. This is not the shit I studied for 20 years of like Hillary rolling out and us all being UN'd into our houses. It's just this, what we're watching is not what was supposed to happen. I studied this game plan for too long for it to be this sloppy. I would be a better Dr. Evil right now. Like, get it together, you guys. We can do better than this. And so when I see like the most hated man in America, or at least what the news would allow me to believe, the most hated man in America, we're pulling down statues over the most racist, sexist guy in the world, and he's allowed to sit ringside at a Conor McGregor fight. I don't think the bad guys are in control anymore. I think that like Britney Spears being allowed to speak and us really hearing the conservatorship. And it's funny, everyone in America, like, can you believe this? Like Britney's dad has all this control over her and she's not allowed to do anything and she's not allowed to spend her own money and she's not allowed to go. Can you believe they were taking vials of her blood and like giving her medication, forcing stuff on her? Can you believe what they're doing to her? And you're like, your government's doing this to you. Hello.
Yeah.
So I think in a really crazy, bizarre way, Britney is like if we were to CIA unbrainwash people, we have to do it through the Hollywood they used. So Britney is soft disclosure. Britney is a very easy pill to swallow. So when Britney starts telling you about horrible sexual atrocities on Epstein Island, we can walk in this Hollywood thing and we're not yet getting to the babies and the people that want to get all the way as deep. They'll have the decision to decide how deep they want to go into looking, but it's not going to be what truthers think, like full disclosure, everyone should know every atrocity. I think that's a naive way to think. How do good moms raise good kids and know every atrocity that we know about the world? How do, like there has to remain some innocence. And if you're a person that's already seen the darkness, why do you want to push that on everybody? Like just take ownership of it and some sort of responsibility and then do your part to change it. You don't have to fucking rub everyone's face in shit. Like they didn't do it. It's like the same way our faces keep getting rubbed in shit for slavery and keeps getting rubbed in shit for every oil spill and keeps getting rubbed in shit for every war. We didn't do this. That debt isn't my debt that they keep wanting to tick up. I paid my bills. So it's like all this stuff we keep taking ownership of. We have to fucking stop. And I even think like the disclosure thing, all the stuff that everybody else doesn't have to fucking know it. Can't you just know it? Can't you just know the ugly shit you saw? Do you have to show everybody that shit? Like, can't you tell them in a kind way? Treat everybody's spirit like it's 8. And then if an 8-year-old asks you a question about that thing, tell it. Don't just, everybody's walking around like Pizzagate and do you know this horrible stuff and kids are getting skinned off at the face. I'm like, we don't need it. Yes, I believe all that shit, but do we need to discuss this stuff at the dinner table on Thanksgiving? Like people just need to, like, people are like, they need to pick their battles better. They need to pick their instruments of war better. They need to fight different than the idiot talking heads on CNN that we've been watching talk for the last 2 decades of our life. They've talked us all into a corner and we don't know how to have a conversation anymore.
Who are bought and paid for. Like even the people that think that the progressives they're not bought and paid for. Like TYT is owned. They took corporate money, political money. There's no such thing as a mainstream balance ever.
There's no such thing as rags to riches. There's no such thing as Joe Rogan is the exact same as Howard Stern. Howard
Yep.
Stern is the exact same as Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh is the exact same as Walter Cronkite. Walter Cronkite's the exact same. If you were watching it on TV, people think it was easier to brainwash people with 3 channels. And it's like, no, it's so much easier with 4,000 channels because now you pick your poison. They know exactly who you are. If you listen to the History Channel, they know how to sell the conspiracy to you. If you watch Real Housewives, they know exactly how to sell it to you. If you watch the CNN compared to Fox, they know how to sell it to you. So it's just like when it was just 3 channels, they had a very broad audience to try to brainwash with just 3 channels. But now we have Netflix and we're exact programming ourselves like Tiger King. Yes. And then I think I'm so clever. Let me make a Bernie Mittens meme. You're not making it viral, clever Kelly Clarkson, American Idol. They're deciding what goes viral. You don't choose the top 40. They choose it and you listen to it so you don't feel like you're last to the party. It's the same as the conspiracies. It's the same as your politicians. It's the same as every fucking idea you think you have. They pick it for you. Nothing goes viral. They decide. The things that I do believe that went viral that aren't supposed to stay there, like Epstein didn't kill himself, 9/11's an inside job, things like that were never meant to stick in the zeitgeist. Things like that of us just repeating it, that lets me know that there is some kind of idea of like punk rock kid that knew a little more about the computer than his parents, knew a little more about the chat rooms than grandma, knew a little more about iPhones than Hillary Clinton. And so it's like, here we are at a place where every single thing is in the Library of Congress now that's ever been on Twitter. So if you're a celebrity and you think you deleted your tweets and Trump just put that in there because his ego and he just wanted to save his tweets. I don't think it's Trump's tweets he was worried about. I think it's going to be real funny when all your guys' tweets come back up. Everybody that deleted their tweets, Rainn Wilson, everybody on Haiti, everybody in Epstein Island, everybody on these tropical trips, all the same key players that are all selling. Imagine all the people singing the same fucking songs, the same people, LeBron James. Yeah, it's all the same key players, same key narrative.
You think? I mean, clearly it's falling apart, but you think all that stuff's going to come out? Like people have been hanging their hat on the McAfee leaks, which basically nothing.
Well, it's 31 terabytes, so that takes a long time to download.
Yeah, we'll see.
And it said that over 30,000 websites got shut down for the quote unquote bad guys trying to look for this drop. So they still can't find it. There's the Ingersoll Lockwood page that it still has some activity going on that people can't quite really figure out what it is. I think it's really interesting that Code Monkey calls out the John McAfee site and kind of calls it out in a way like, I might call you out if we're working for the same team and I need more people to go to your page. Because let's say I'm going to release the truth and you 3 are the only people that once I drop my truth are going to take pictures of it and release it on your accounts. But all you 3 are shadow banned because that's exactly where we're at right now. The only people that could release this information are all screaming at each other in one corner of the internet, have lost their accounts altogether. So something has to precisely unclick. You're almost you're marketing this. You're building it up like Britney showing her tits every other day. She's going to do something big because she's showing her tits and then taking it down and showing her tits and taking it down. Now she's squeezing her tits. Now she's laying in a bathtub. She's leading up. This is marketing. This is how she's getting like 100,000 more followers a day. It's the same thing as John McAfee's account. He's getting more and more followers a day. Code Monkey, he started talking shit about Mike Lindell. Everybody's like, who's Mike Lindell? Everybody finds out Mike Lindell, sees that Mike Lindell has this documentary coming out talking all about the steel and all about whatever. And then Code Monkey says, I take back everything I said about Mike Lindell. You guys should check out his documentary. It's like these key players that are working behind the scenes, whether it's John McAfee or not. To me, John McAfee has more legs to stand on than Julian Assange with the amount of information that he could actually release. And everybody who knows anything about computers knows logistically, this motherfucker could have had every single State Department's information go through his hands. Literally every single government still uses this virus scan today. And this guy's next level pirate weird that he would have made himself a back door. He's just computer people are always that weird. No one's ever buying their software from them completely. They can always take it back over whenever they want. So it's funny to me that the one dude who's at charge of all the bad guy helm, the Bill Gates, the one thing we know that it's on all his computers forever is this virus scan. This dude has nothing to gain by attaching himself to QAnon at his death switch. He has nothing to gain by it at all. It actually, I would say, costs him a little credibility by releasing a Q right with it. It makes everybody completely like, fuck this. This wasn't even a dead man switch. When if he would have attached himself to WikiLeaks or dropped it with Julian Assange, it would have gotten tons more legs to stand on than him attaching the Q.
Credibility. Mm-hmm.
But then if you actually think about what Q is, and if you ever studied it, there are very few motherfuckers that could have pulled it off. And John McAfee is definitely one of those dudes, even down to the maritime and always being on that boat. We know he had a minimum of 5 dudes that were pretending to be John McAfee at any given time. He always called himself the master of disguise. It's funny the way that they kept trying to like smear his name with all those weird documentaries and talking about he liked to eat shit and scat porn and everything else they tried to do with John McAfee. And a big QAnon thing that always happened that John McAfee says is how do you get your enemy to waste their ammunition? And so now it's curious to me. We're watching Cuomo come out that they're talking about him grabbing ass, and we're talking about Trump's tax returns, and we're not talking about the Arizona audit. We're not talking about John McAfee, but it's like they seem like they've run out of ammunition to the point that we're still talking about the insurrection. Like, whew, it's desperate news days. So
Yeah,
I just feel
that-
like I
that
just
keeps
think like
coming
they're
back
going to
up.
kill a royal, like somebody's waiting in the back that they're just waiting for the Maricopa thing to drop, which we think comes on the 11th. I think that's the day that the Maricopa County is the same day that Julian Assange is going to be in court and could get released, is the same day that the EBS broadcasting is, or the emergency broadcasting alert supposed to go across America.
Oh, really? Is that true? It's
Yeah,
the
there's
same
an
day?
EBS national alert. I think it's scheduled for August 11th. So it's supposed to be every cell phone, every TV, everything is supposed to go off at the same time, like an Amber Alert.
On
We get
8/11.
those-
8/11. And I
Hmm.
believe 8/11 is the same day as Julian Assange. If it's not, it's
know.
all right in that 8, 11, 12, 13.
That's interesting because when we get, especially this time of year, Arizona gets a lot of those EMS alerts because of monsoon season.
Another
Everybody's
Q thing,
affected.
I don't know if it's a Q proof, but I was digging up. There's like a whole bunch of stuff where it's like FISA D5, FISA
yeah.
sessions D5. Oh, yeah.
We get them all the time.
It's like
Especially
that, but
this
on a
time of year.
national level. But one of them is FISA D5. And so I was just like, this is just yesterday. I was like, D5. I wonder what D5, we always talk about what these
Yeah.
certain things in QAnon
It's
mean.
codes.
So I put in District 5 and Arizona, and it pulled up what county's District 5 in
Yeah,
Arizona.
it's Maricopa.
Yeah. So I'm like, holy shit.
Mhm.
And so when I was looking up the FISAs, and then we know everything about the Dominion now that they know, and we know they watermarked all these things ahead of time because they were planning on the steal. Like the good guys knew the steal had to go down to catch the bad guys. Like you have to let the bank robber leave the bank. So it's so crazy to me that now looking at these Q things that we know this is all happening on these dates with the future proving the past of it all, that District 5 is actually Maricopa County. And I'm like, holy shit, this is written in 2018. And it's all these same FISAs that are all the same thing they're talking about now because they're still waiting for all the documentation. They're between a rock and a hard place with everything. They answer the subpoena and give them the rest of the information they need, or they don't, and they prove it's all criminal and they have to redo it. Joe Biden's saying that Andrew Cuomo should step down. Like it's like they're eating themselves, and that's the other thing QAnon says. And John McAfee is like, what do you do when your enemy starts to eat itself? You stand back and watch. So it is funny where we're at right now. That I still think the Q kids have something.
Hmm.
Hopium.
So
They still have hopium.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
huh.
has to be. You're on the highest timeline. You believe that, um, as far as we've been alive, it's pretty been run by evil, an illusion of evil. So, are we God? If you're God, attached to God, does the idea of God win? Do we win this time? I think we
we
do.
win, we win every time.
Do we?
Eventually.
Well, this is the time to me. I think we all chose to be alive right now. We're like literally living
did.
through the new world order,
Totally.
and we have all the information. We have the game plan, we have the books, we know the key players. Um, they're really doing a whole black plague, and none of us are scared. It's
Yeah.
kind of ridiculous at this point. I mean, I've totally made peace with staring Hillary Clinton face to face or being in a FEMA camp with all my best friends. It's like I if I get burned for being a witch, I'm like, how fucking cool is this LARP turned out to be? There's really no way there's no fear I have in this lifetime anymore. And
Isn't that
there's nothing
great?
about Joe Biden's presidency in my 3D logic that's real. There's nothing about Joe Biden's presidency in my, like, if I try to watch the TV and my hardest hard of making sense, like this is real and this guy's the president and here's what's happening. Um, I just can't convince myself of it. None of it feels real.
It doesn't,
It
doesn't
doesn't
it?
feel real.
It's really funny though. Just the last few years, it's felt like waking up from a dream. Like everything before that was just a dream. Like it feels ethereal. It's like it's almost like time changed 2 or 3 years ago. And I hear this from a lot of people that the last 2 or 3 years, like they've been, or 5 years, have been a really big amount of change for a lot of different people that I've been hearing. Have you been hearing that? Like different, getting to know people and hearing different their stories. Like it was like almost everything in their lives were heading up to the last 3 years or 5 years or something like that. Have you been noticing that?
Have you seen that movie Signs with Mel Gibson?
Yes.
How, like, when the aliens in their house, how everything up until that whole point of their life led to that moment. Like the daughter didn't like particles in her water, so they had these glasses of water all over the house, and the son was a failed baseball player. So it's like he just happened to have his bat he never picked up right there, and then he heard her in his ear say swing away with all these water, and they saved themselves from the aliens. That's really how I think of my life right now. Like I have a nose phobia, so it didn't, if they tested for coronavirus in a million other ways, maybe I would have done it, but no one's sticking anything up my nose. I have constriction things where, like, if they would have asked me, if they would have said, oh, you catch coronavirus from walking forward, just start walking backwards, I might have done that, but I just have a weird thing with covering up my face. It's just like all the little stuff that led up to the communism takeover was just phobias I had. Like stuff in my life just led up to, like, I don't want to do that. So yeah, I kind of do feel like somehow time all became perfect for this. Even knowledge, like I see a symbol somewhere and I'm like, oh my God, I remember
Right.
reading that. Like it's like my brain even pulls it out, like esoteric knowledge. Like that's Rosicrucian. And then I'm like, oh, Rose. And then I'm go on some whole other weird dig that I didn't even know I knew anything about it.
Yeah, I had a dream about Chiron last night, the healer.
What's that?
That's the broken healer from Greek myth, that he was the centaur
Oh, okay.
and he had to, it's that whole broken healer, like he learned how to heal himself, and so he taught the rest of the gods to how to heal.
Hmm. That's pretty.
But it was it was really weird because I had this dream, and I was doing the whole lucid dream thing where you kind of get yourself into that state as you're falling asleep, and keep yourself conscious as you're going into your dream. So I was doing that, and so I was trying to do kind of heaven meditations, right? Putting myself in heaven. And there were people, lots of people, but then there was a centaur in the middle of the people. Like, this is, to me, in the dream, it said, this is where you are or where you're going. It was almost like a direction. There were all people, but there was that one. And which is interesting too, because the centaur is the horse man. And the horses are always, at least in Greek myth, were associated with the ocean also. Like the hippocampus is the seahorse. Alan, you make those bitchin' connections.
Yeah. And in the never-ending story, the Empress's physician is a centaur named Chiron.
There you go. Bring it all around. Always bringing it around. Spiking the ball. Love that.
It's centaurs and minotaurs. Doesn't it seem like if you were an alien and you came down to Earth and you were trying to figure out the right combination of worker, those would have been all the animals you came up with before you got to us to dig out the gold and silver? Like, you'd have been like, oh, this horse seems strong. Let's give it a top half of monkey. Maybe that'll be a good worker. It's not quite perfect. And then they're like, oh, this bull seems strong. Let's give it a monkey body and a bull head. And they're like, oh, it's not quite perfect. It's like they keep having to do all these little, and they're like, we're going to have to use maybe this pig and this goat, and that's how we'll create this human instead.
Well, all the myths say that's what a lot of the myths say, that we had these chimeras before, that the creators created these chimeras, and the creators made these chimeras, and we're doing it again. We're doing it again with all these monkey pig DNA sample things that we're making so that we can save somebody, some Saudi prince, because he needs a liver. We're making those chimeras right now. Who knows if that's what, it's probably what the chupacabra is. It didn't show up till the 60s, right?
What about the skinwalkers?
Well, skinwalkers are witches.
I think
They're dark
maybe
witches.
it's or an entity from another dimension that comes through a vortex and doesn't really have I guess, like, we see them as what our mind creates what they are, what they look like, sort of like how people see jinn differently, or like some people might see an elf, or other people might see something scary. It's like an energetic entity, I think, perhaps.
Like Medusa
Yeah. Like yeah.
or sirens, even.
Mm-hmm. Right. Sirens.
The warning from the siren, and you were giving us a possible date of 8/11/811. Did you know that 813 is part of the consecutive Fibonacci numbers? It's the last consecutive Fibonacci date this century. It's the golden proportion of 2021, and it's Friday the 13th in August.
Ooh. I feel like for some reason that's Julian Assange's day. I think the 11th, the EBS and Maricopa, and 13th is Julian Assange's trial. And he could walk out on a gavel hammer. And think of how long we've been watching this. Like, I feel like anyone who's ever been in the truth community, if there is somebody maybe that you can hang a white hat on, it's potentially Julian Assange. And we've literally watched this dude be imprisoned, and whatever the Ecuadorian embassy, whoever those people are, there were some good guys involved in there because Hillary wanted to drone that motherfucker.
Julian
Donnie
Assange
just said
with
his
literal
birthday is
white hair.
8/13. Sorry, what'd you say, Al?
Julian Assange with literal white hair.
Oh, yeah. So,
For a long time, too.
Mm-hmm.
Such a
yeah.
wizard.
So that I have a personal thing with the Julian Assange story, because that WikiLeaks, man, it changed how I saw a lot of things, man. Because I had seen some of those drone missions that were killing civilians. I saw those firsthand, and like months later, I saw that was what WikiLeaks. That's when WikiLeaks blew up. Was the news story of, at least to me, the news story of the Jordanian Reuters journalist that was killed. I saw that happen, and so months later, when WikiLeaks posted the video, I was like, because I knew I was being watched because I had a security clearance, so they watch you like a hawk whether you're at work or not. And so I knew that they knew that I was seeing that. So it got very, very tense at work because I was still working there when that WikiLeaks stuff blew up, and he was the only one saying it, showing it. I think that was the one that Chelsea Manning released.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The amount of WikiLeaks stuff's insane. Sorry, go on.
Oh no, I was just going to ask you where you saw that, Gordon.
Oh, at my job. I was working for the military industrial complex on drones, and so it was part of something I had to do with them was like troubleshoot like live mission things. At least that's what they told me. I think it's bullshit. I think it was a fake job to be traumatized by something. But I did see that like live, and like kids were killed, and it wasn't just that Jordanian journalist. It was slaughter, man. There was a lot of slaughter. I mean, that was just the one that made it out. We saw a lot of them.
Crazy. That sucks.
But thank God for at least somebody said something, you know?
No, and even look at the psychological trauma of whatever happened to Manning. Like, even, I mean, I will give that person the respect of calling them Chelsea, but I just really think something is a snap or an abuse or some kind of torture that happened to that person in between all the stuff in between. If Julian Assange had to lock himself inside an Ecuadorian embassy to stay safe, and everybody knew Chelsea Manning's name and face, he was not treated kind. Like, awful shit happened to that person.
Yep.
Because she was the only thing America could get their hands on that had any attachment to anything to do with Julian Assange.
Yeah, he was the one that gave it over.
Mm-hmm. And he was always really big about covering his sources. So he wasn't the one who ever even outed her. And even down to Seth Rich.
Do people know that story? Like, do people know? I don't think that they hear Julian Assange, but they don't know. They think it's like this. They see the same thing as like the Guy Fawkes mask, and is
or Edward
Julian
Snowden.
Assange.
It's like
Yeah,
they're
Edward
just
Snowden,
right
that they're all
together.
the same thing, and they're not. Like, people don't understand the story. I think it's being purposely confused within like culture too, so that people don't get it. So
Well, they
don't see
buried
it.
him as a rapist really quickly,
Right,
like
really
just
quick.
very quickly, and that was a whole crazy story. And I uh his upbringing's really weird too. Like he was always, I think he was born to be a hacker. Like his whole entire childhood. I think his mother is really
Well,
strange. I don't remember the whole entire thing
they
in
look
detail
for
now, but
they purposely look for those things though too, to recruit them, because if they have those kind of weird um, unconventional upbringings, like they're probably more likely to have childhood trauma. And when there's childhood trauma, they're easily manipulable. They can brainwash them more because your brain has already taught itself to forget stuff. And so they traumatize you again. And so then they can actually pinpoint how much they can get you to forget. So they got to him. And when they come back, stuff gets mixed up, stuff gets really fucked up. And I could see easily how a gender thing after abuse, like I could see how
Chelsea Manning.
how
I thought you were
people.
talking about Julian Assange.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I was talking about, yeah, Chelsea,
Yeah,
what,
totally.
or whatever
Like,
his name was.
yeah, breaking, what is that?
They
Like,
broke him.
yeah, finding an altar. Like
Really?
I always say that Anna Nicole Smith is the easiest person to attach to the finding an altar. But Britney Spears, when you see her like doing this tiny little voice and this little baby thing, they like break these girls down into their child self, because when they get to that child self, that's the easiest one to control.
Oh
That's the
yeah,
easiest one
absolutely.
to
The breaking.
implant with
Yeah.
all the ideas. But then they also all have this very big siren side. That's where you get the Sasha Fierce. That's where you get the like very vampy, very over sexual Miley Cyrus. But they're all just different alters. And that's where a big, huge side effect of all this kind of trauma and mind control is schizophrenia. And that's where you get like Roseanne.
Yeah, I can see how it happens now too. Like, because you start to question everything. When you start to question your own thoughts, like what we're talking about, if you're already questioning your own thoughts, being your own, but you don't have the tools to come back to some sort of center, like of course you're easily manipulable. Like they've got you at that point. Does that make sense? Like
Yes.
they can manipulate you really easily. You're like clay.
This brings us back
Especially,
to apophenia, the tendency to perceive meaningful connections between unrelated things. The term was coined by psychiatrist Klaus Conrad in his 1958 publication on the beginning stages of schizophrenia. He defined it as unmotivated seeing of connections accompanied by a specific feeling of abnormal meaningfulness. So they've already got that written out so that they can control that idea.
And it's linked to schizophrenia.
Correct.
I pretty much all of pseudoscience, psychiatry, therapy, all of that's bullshit. all of it. Even think most of the mental houses, probably most of the people that were in these mental houses suffering from schizophrenia were really, or bipolar, whatever order they named it back then, were really people that were probably victims of MK Ultra, mind control, sexual trauma, abuse with these elite people, and they were too loud, or it was too prevalent in certain societies like New York City, Chicago, these kind of areas. So they put them all into these insane asylums that we know tons of famous people were in and out of, like I Seen Fire and I Seen Rain and Carly Simon and all these people. They were in and out of all these insane asylums. And then at the same time, they shut all these insane asylums down. And everyone's like, oh, they ran out of funding. Did they? Or did Jimmy Savile and all that start to break out in the UK? And they didn't want all that noise linking to every single insane asylum throughout America and every single doctor and every single church and pope and blah, 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 blah. And the story goes. And it's also a huge siphoning off of tons of tax dollars into these places that they're doing weird, like vices and electrotherapies and weird experiments on people too, that these discoveries then go and get either locked in a vault or sold again back to us. But yeah, I think I just really, it's hard for me to believe in anything because everything seems to attach to some kind of narrative of theirs.
And then disprove your own theory.
And I love that.
That's
I like
awesome. I love
no
that.
cement shoes in my, I try to change my mind all the time or argue with myself. Like,
I love that. Like when I'm proven wrong or proven something else bigger, I'm like, whoa, that's the best. Like once you hit a level and you're like, oh shit. Oh, there's another level. Then you like get all excited again,
yeah, I'll sit there, I'll hear myself vent for 5 minutes about something, and then I'm like, oh, well, I guess, except for these people. Never mind. I changed my mind altogether. And I'm like, I see what you're saying. And you have to be, I think we've all been so conditioned, even with our closest friends and family, that we have so much ego in our opinions and we have so much false fact in our opinions that we just don't know how to fucking let it go. Everything's become this lie and act that we're living up to every day. And then we're researching to confirm the bias in our opinion we already have. And so we even Google search, like we don't Google, like if I'm looking up what is the color blue, I put, is the color blue the ocean? Because that's how I see the color blue. And I only want to argue the color blue like that. So I never look as the color blue the sky or is the color blue sad. I only look as the color blue the ocean. So it always fits my confirmation bias. And I never have to break out of this comfort because that we've been attached to think, oh, that's fear. That's fear. That's fear. But we don't even know what fear is anymore. When there used to be like that moment before you did anything you were excited about, whether it was play a sport or paint or fucking speak in a podcast, you would have excitement and anxiety, but it was a different kind of anxiety. It wasn't fear. It was because you wanted to do a good job. And so somewhere they've like totally broken us of what real fear is and what our ego is and what doubt is and what like even imposter syndrome. We all think we're a bunch of fucking imposters, so we can't even figure out who we are to even think to say it because you're posting a way better version of me on Facebook. So it's yeah, we're all doing the job of the machine now, even in the conspiracy world, like where I pull up a CNN article and then argue it for an hour on my show. Is the news real or is the news not real? Why are we fucking wasting our breath with this? Well, you talked about a Fox article. How about they're all fake and we stop arguing about this stupid shit? Like,
yeah, I love when they somebody says, yeah, but I thought you said that all the news was real. Yeah, or all the news was fake. And they're like, yeah, but you sent me this news story. I'm like, yeah, just because, 1 out of 10,000, stop clock is right sometimes, but that's the news. You're not if you're going to assume that anything you see is real, like that's just naive. Like we know that these things aren't solid. our the wood is a vibration of something else. Like we could go through that if we didn't have these things. Like we already know this. Like why would you think that somebody would tell you something real on a national? Everything's entertainment now.
Or is it even real? Like
it's not.
The fire in the ocean, was that real at all, or was that CGI?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing when I was looking
like
at the
how much
turkey
shit is
fires this
CGI
morning,
altogether?
today. Mm-hmm.
Like no one knows, no one has anyone there, so it's all a population debt COVID counter. No one knows, and it all looks like CGI, like that big bomb that the Navy set off the coast of Jacksonville. But then if you think that bomb or that fire is fake, why do you think the Manhattan Project was real? Why do you think Hiroshima bombs were real? Why do you think that was atomic? What is atomic? What's nuclear? What's the difference? So then it's like we get into all these arguments of things that people really have no fucking idea what they're talking about, but it would break all the money they spent on their education of all their listening to Joe Rogan or all the books they read on blank. But I could just be like, I think that's baking soda and vinegar shaken up on a model scale, and that house you see blown away is made out of matchsticks. And you really can't disprove it because all of it's such bullshit. I don't know if Desert Storm ever really happened. I know people that went to the desert somewhere. I have friends that were actual soldiers. I know people that were hurt, and I know a lot more people with post-traumatic stress from it. But how much of it was actually real? If they can tell me Mars and it can be in the middle of Utah, I don't know where Afghanistan's at. It sure does seem important for every country to keep trying to invade there. But I can't think it's because of the Taliban or terrorists. So what's it for? Why do I know about it at all? Why do the powers that be tell me about this place at all? Why don't they just go there and meddle with it? Why are they telling us about it? There has to be some kind of like energy we give it by accepting like, okay, go bomb that place.
Was I hearing you say atomic or a Tom Hank?
Yes.
I'm not sure anymore.
Both things are true.
Nuclear or Nell Carter?
Nell Carter. What was that? Give me a break. Is that what show that was? She was an MK Ultra agent.
Yeah, Joey Lawrence. She totally was probably diddling Joey Lawrence. That was the whole show full of kids.
Was it really?
Give me a break. It was a whole show of kids. And then Joey Lawrence is totally one of those actors. Blossom, Six.
Whoa.
6.
Yeah.
Sounds like you want to say something, Al.
Whoa.
Oh, is that? Oh, that's whoa. Joey Lawrence. That's your. Whoa. That's your. That's your Joey Lawrence impression. Is. Oh. My Fonzie. Hey. Well,
this is my share. Woo.
That's my share.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, not bad. I
need that hair.
I need the hair. Gypsies, tramps, and thieves. I can do it.
Mine, I always do if I can turn back time is the share. But usually, if I find any song that I sing, any time if I try to do an Elvis impression, it just sounds like Cher. So I just think any lady who tries to do an Elvis impression, that's just Cher.
She is Cher. Her vibrato is exactly the same.
Yeah. Every lady that does Elvis. So just make any girl that you know sing like, since my baby left me. And you're like, oh my gosh, it's Cher.
And Cher singing Walking in Memphis about Elvis.
Huh. Black Velvet. That's about Elvis. Elena Miles,
Yeah,
right?
Alana Miles. That's right. Hey, do you remember Tanita Takaram? Does that
Mm-mm.
name sound familiar? Twisted My
No.
Sobriety. Oh, I was just thinking, it just popped in my head because what's her name? It was around that same time that what's her name was famous too. Who did we just
Cher.
mention? Sure. No, the the other one. The Alana Miles. That's right.
Oh yeah. Black Velvet's the only song I know from
I think
her. I don't
that's
know what
all
else
it
she ever
was,
did.
right? She was
I don't,
Canadian.
I don't know. And really that song was probably out for 2 decades before I heard the words, even though I felt like I sang the words, but before I'm like, oh, this song's about Elvis.
Hmm.
They're like Mississippi, middle of a heat wave. It's like a whole song about Elvis. Love me tender, leaves them dying in the aisles.
It was good stuff though. I think about how crappy the music is now. It really wasn't any better in the 80s or 90s. It was just, like I always romanticize 80s music, because that's when I was a kid. But you go back and listen to what was top 40, it was garbage too. It was so garbage.
Michael Jackson owns all of it.
Yeah, everything in the 80s.
He owns everything. He would have
Yeah.
left. That's why they killed him, because he would have left Sony Music owning more than half of Sony Music, which would have been the biggest deal of all time really for one man to walk away with that much of any of these corporations. And I even think business deals he made, like marrying Lisa Marie Presley for Elvis's. Paul McCartney was the one who told him in the back end to buy the Elvis catalogs. It's like all these artists kind of that were being fucked by the record labels. Michael Jackson was about to do the biggest fuckery to all the record labels of all time. And his last album was called This Is It. And they murdered him. And then they ruined his legacy by calling him a pedophile and bought his entire. It was worth billions and billions and billions of dollars. And they bought it all from his kids for like $260 million. So when you hear stories about today that Rihanna is worth $1 billion, what do you think Michael Jackson was worth?
Is that true? Rihanna's
Yeah.
worth $1 billion?
$1 billion. And so when they tell you stories like Britney Spears is worth $60 million, there's some heavy fuckery going on.
Wow. I was thinking about that lately because of the whole Chris Cornell and Chester thing, but a whole bunch of them just died. A whole bunch of rock stars from like 80s and 90s just died. Like Dusty Hill just died, but he's old, from ZZ Top. Two guys from Cinderella, the band Cinderella, just died, like the drummer and the keyboardist. And the drummer from Slipknot, Joey Jordison, just died. And somebody else I can't remember, but those that all happened in July.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't heard anyone. I think whatever this last year did for people, I think depression, post-traumatic stress, addiction, alcoholism. Some people that had very healthy relationships didn't sign up to be cellmates with their partners. And so I think it changed a lot of that. I think a lot of parents didn't know their friggin' children at all. And that was a whole heavy thing. I think the repercussions mentally and spiritually and physically of all of this afterward, like it will take years for us to see, or like the way certain kids, it might take certain kids years, like we're going to be walking through public all normal and we're going to see a couple little children still walking around in masks because they're scared. Like it's going to be like a boogeyman. Like, oh, well, she walks around with her ninny blanket because she's scared of the dark. It's going to be that for certain kids where they walk around with these masks on.
It's a comfort for a lot of people, I think, that still wear the mask because it feels safe. It feels there's like some anonymity and with a mask on. There's some safety.
A lot of people say that. A lot of people in my life, like it's a comfort for them. They like it. I don't understand that, and I think it's separating us from each other on purpose. And
It's
that
the
I know
great
for sure.
reset. Reset. You chant no justice, no peace. You take a knee. You would wear a mask. You would stand 6 feet apart to make sure that your Taurus
Mhm.
fields didn't attach. And that is how you would bring in the forever night of Seth or the god Set. So the great reset.
That is really true, though. The torsion fields, once you meditate and you kind of feel if you feel your energies rotating, you can kind of feel that your whole field is torsions. And you can feel that where that is.
You can feel it around even like this and with video, and like it makes really time and space not that matter as much because of this video and voice and doing podcasts, and you can feel energies like this. You can feel people's Taurus fields all the way from here because that's how real energy is. So there you're like, shit, what are they doing to us by like we're not allowed to touch anymore? Like the idea of me even traveling to see you, I'd have to drive however long I have to drive because I am not allowed to get on a plane anymore because I won't wear a mask. And I'm not a person that'll play reindeer games because I have friends that are like, Chaney, you can just go on. And as long as you have a cocktail, you don't even have to put your mask over your face. I don't play reindeer games. I'm not placating. I'm not playing along with any of this. I won't fake a vaccine card. No, it's not real to me. I just, it's like I'm not going to argue a Delta variant because it's not real. Like, is there stuff that was probably released from a bio lab? Probably. If they could kill us all, they would kill us all. The reason there's like Saudi Arabian respiratory virus SARS, the reason that there's MERS, Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome, the reason that there's it's because they can't kill us all. We are all so different. That's why they keep having to gather our DNA. It's like what would kill me wouldn't kill you, and what would kill you wouldn't kill a black guy in the middle of Somalia. We're all so different. That's why they keep saying, oh, well, this one mutated to this and this one mutated to that. But no, they're going to put the sickness in the cure. And that's how they're going to keep spreading the quote unquote variants. And it's a fool's errand at this point to even see it any other way. Because most people I know that are conspiracy theorists would rather die in their house than admit they have coronavirus or get tested for it. So I'm like, yeah. So I'm just like, the numbers are so off. And everyone I know I've known a couple of people of recent that have gotten corona or tested positive. Everyone I know that has both of the shots. So when I hear 99.9%, I'm like, oh, I know the only two people that were fully vaccinated and got corona. And yeah, the mask is the same as
it's
a vaccine, or the same as, if I'm eating broccoli, does it make you healthy? It's just, what are we doing?
Yeah. If I don't use an umbrella in the rain, it's not getting you wet.
Is my lack of sunscreen giving you cancer? But I think sunscreen causes more cancer than the sun.
Oh, totally. Absolutely. In fact, the sun is so healing, and that's what everybody needs right now, especially now. These people for mental health, like they need to take back their power. Like you got to get out in the sun first. I'm kind of like keto coaching my sister right now, and once I get her eating better, oh my God, you got to get out of the sun, girl. You need sun.
That might be one of the. Sorry, it might be one of the reasons why all the chemtrails, because like my doctor said she recommends vitamin D to everybody, because everybody that she tested in the last like 5 years has had like no vitamin D in their body.
Mm-hmm.
Like a new thing, and it makes you sick not having having low vitamin D. It weakens your
Absolutely.
immune system. Yeah.
And the darker skin that you are, the less vitamin D that you have in your body naturally. And that's why a lot of these diseases, even like HIV, are more susceptible in the Black communities.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they know that the vitamin D is the thing that fights it off.
But then on
They
the
knew that-
reverse end of it, there must be something fucking magical about the melanin, because it
Right?
seems to be the highest price thing that they keep effing with Haiti. And, you know, all the islands around there. It's not just there, but I think there's something very magical. It's interesting to me that we have hoodoo, voodoo, santeria, like just the amount of mysticism that goes on around that Gulf of Mexico. It's insane to me, the amount of magic that exists and how similar rituals and deities and things kind of are, and then how we're just all blanketly, when you say any of those things, hoodoo, voodoo, santeria, that you're like evil, but it's like, oh, you know, it's the same as all
I
these
wonder if
other
it's a
religions.
33rd parallel thing. Because there's a
You're frozen, Gordon Two Shoes. Maybe his connection dropped.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
looked like it might have dropped cold
Illuminati confirmed with the whole 33rd parallel.
right when he said it too.
This chat began 3 hours and 22 minutes ago.
And owl. Moloch.
There it is. Cremation of care.
It's also the you know, where the Bermuda Triangle is, right in that area. There's a lot of magic.
okay. What did I miss? Because you guys missed a lot. I have to start over. I have
You
to
said
start all over.
33rd parallel and it cut off.
No, I don't know. I was just saying that I think we're on the same parallel, but Santeria is very big here. That Mexican border, you know,
Mhm.
right there in line with Florida and the Bahamas and that whole thing. I wonder if it's one of those kind of things, like a ley line where we kind of absorb magic.
Sometimes I think that the ley lines that we think are the ley lines, because of things like, you know, the seven wonders of the world or whatever's on these ley lines, I think that the real ley lines are probably different than they tell us, because, you know, they lie about everything else. And the real ley lines are probably on like slaughterhouses and, you know, abortion clinics and Super Bowl arenas and these kind of weird ritualistic events, away from uh, where we would assume. I almost think like maybe if the pyramids and things like that were a way of regulating the energy around the planet and pulling some power off the ley lines so that it maybe covered and dispersed the world more. But I think there's something so key with precious metals and the way that they do all the domes of their capitals, and the way that even the casted statues are out of bronze and copper, and these silvers and cast in gold. And I think that was a big, huge, pivotal reason for the big pull downs of a lot of these statues. Like whoever we think Robert E. Lee was, or whoever we think a Buck was, you know, in Oregon. But there, it's really what these metals are casted out of, and spells they hold for ritual and symbol and like relic magic. That's what I think is. It was like important for the bad witches to get these safety, almost like they were keeping safe. I also think another big, huge spell that was keeping certain parts of the country safe was the Dixie flag with the stars across it. And that's why they called it racist, and that's why they wanted it off the state capitals. I think there was certain spells and illusions that couldn't be put over certain states as long as that flag flew above it. So I think metals, flag magic, it's all stuff that existed kind of in this medieval King Arthur way, but they're LARPing things that I think we need to take more seriously. Like when somebody picks up a flag and feels compelled to do that and head before a line, and if that person falls, somebody else feels compelled to grab that flag. There's a magic in that. It's like the same as a person feeling the need to be the one playing the horn in the front to keep the troops going forward, or the one person feeling the need to type a meme to make all their family hate them. It's like you're having a calling by something bigger than you, and that's kind of magic and energy.
Very well put.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And these are all kind of just conspiracies I make up. I don't know if it's real or not, but something about it just seems like it is.
Yeah, but these are the things we need to think about to get our brains working. You know, we need to expand the thought. So sick of shallow conversation. We have to think about these things, or else stuff starts dying.
Yeah. There's a reason why they have kids pledge their allegiance to a flag. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's obedience. Like you're giving up your power. You're giving up your sovereignty when you do that.
Or are you saying a mantra?
Yeah.
One nation under God, indivisible, and justice for all. Are you saying a mantra and that's why they want to get rid of it?
They're definitely getting rid of it.
Because anyone that talks about sovereign citizenship, there's never been a document written closer for that idea than the Constitution. And if
Yeah.
you think there'll ever be a document written again to ever get as far as the Constitution has gotten, you're crazy, especially if you're paying attention to the world we're in right now. So for me, as an American in 2021, I think it's a document still worth fighting for. It's the closest one we'll ever have to being sovereign citizens and having everything written exactly how it should, that we are free from God, but you are naive if you think you don't need a bigger set of people and laws to give that to you, because other people will take your freedoms. There's always bad people out there. You can be the biggest prepper in the world and grow all the tomatoes to feed 100 people, and one bad person with a gun can take them. So if there's not a sheriff in town that's willing to stand up for you and your family, you're never allowed to sleep. You're never really going to feel freedom, because you're always going to feel the need of providing for everybody else. That's why we as collective, we vote on certain people to be the ones to take care of those things so we can raise our family and garden and meditate and do these things. So, I think a big naive thing in the conspiracy world is everyone's like, burn it all to the ground. They're all bad. Capitalism, communism, all the isms, it's all bad. Like, no, there has been something that's been done better than anything else before it. And if you don't think it's the Constitution, I would say you haven't read your Constitution. And I would even I would bet $100 you don't know your state's Constitution. So I would even go further to say you have no idea what your own Constitution is.
Nailed it. Yep. Find your own constitution.
So I know it's just funny. I always hear everyone talk about sovereign citizen. I'm a sovereign citizen. I'm like, those two words are, you're just boom, right together with two ideas that make no sense. You're like sovereign, or are you a citizen?
Yeah, you can't be sovereign citizen. You're
no,
sovereign.
It doesn't make
You're
any
a sovereign
sense.
being.
No, and then I hear like sovereign law.
Well,
what?
And that's getting, see, that term right there is getting, I think that's a psyop, because that the word sovereign is being manipulated too.
Mm-hmm. It's like maritime.
They're
like,
devaluing it. Like sovereign is accountable only to God. That's it. You and God. That's what sovereignty is.
That scares a lot of people.
It
does. They don't want to be accountable to themselves.
Well, that's what it means, though, to be self-responsible. And yeah, it's terrifying to people. Nobody wants to do. I don't want to be responsible for myself, let alone anybody else. My God.
Responsible for the traumas you brought on you this lifetime.
Oh, that I chose. Yeah.
Like if you really want to call yourself God, like it's like sometimes when I'm sitting with a group of women and we're philosophizing these thoughts, I'm like, okay, God, why did you get yourself raped last week?
Yeah.
Okay, God, why did you get yourself into that situation where you were a single mother of two and then had to have an abortion on the third kid because you couldn't afford it, God?
Mhm.
Like we all got ourselves into the situation that we're in. And like, okay, God, why did you choose to be a lesbian? That seems like an easy walk. Like why,
Right.
God? It's so if you are here and you chose this avatar right now to be alive, um, your Achilles heels are your superpowers. It's how it always
Yeah.
is. Like you're Phoenix, you might kill your mom and dad until you get that shit under control, Jean Grey, but then you can save the world.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to go through the fire. The only way out is through. But you're right, we chose it somehow.
I agree with that.
But that's the freedom from being a victim, though, too, that people don't understand is that taking on that responsibility gives the victimhood no weight. Like your victimhood is gone at that point. Once you realize, oh shit, I don't have to live here. I can go do the other thing. I can not let it define me anymore.
It's a really good show, you guys. I
Yeah,
had,
you
I had a
too.
lot of fun.
I liked it.
Yeah. You just Jim's like, yeah, you guys. You should.
Whoa.
And now I need to go back and look at the chat to see everything I missed.
Oh, the chat was awesome.
Well, I'm sure it was.
The chat will rise like a
Hey,
phoenix.
Jamie, thank you for doing this. I really
Oh,
appreciate
I
it.
was super fun. I liked it. Your show's super chill. You guys are awesome.
Yeah, you'll definitely have to come back.
Yeah, I'll totally come hang out with you guys. And impromptu, if you guys are doing it late, yeah, hit me up if I'm available. I'll totally come hang out.
Very cool. We will do that. We'll hit you up for it.
Right
Yeah.
on. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys.
It's what is it, like 3 a.m. there? It's like
It's 1:40.
1:40. Late enough. But thank you for hanging out with us. I appreciate it.
Gordy, that's what we
Sure.
were saying when your internet froze. It was at 3:22 since we had started. And then I did this.
Ah, okay.
And it was perfect because then your owl was up.
Yep.
Ah, perfect.
Mhm.
See? It all came together. All right.
It always
Past
does.
the old man's bedtime.
Thank
Yeah.
you guys. Thank you. Thank you. Nice to meet you guys.
Yeah. Thank you for doing this again.
Yeah.
For sure.
Have a good night, guys. Appreciate it.
We live in your mind.
We live in your minds. Till next time.
Okay, bye.
Who's your favorite Phoenician?
I don't know any. Tell me Phoenicians, and then I'll be like, oh.
I don't think the Phoenicians even called themselves that.
Bunch of phonies.
Phonies.
Those Phoenicians. Maritime lawlers. Oops. Lost the music there.